John Elias Cruel Summer edit with... Start your sublight engines. It's time for RuPalp's Pod Race, a queer Star Wars podcast. In case you missed it from last week's episode, since there aren't any major Star Wars projects to talk about right now, we're returning with a new series of special episodes, RuPalp's Day Off, where each episode we talk about one non-Star Wars piece of media we all love. Hello, John. Apologies for the deception. God damn it. Okay. I just want to make it clear.
Things in the agenda.
I love that. I really did just get Jonathan Sims'ed because I was just going to read that without thinking about it whatsoever. Okay, well, we'll get into that in a bit. Anyway, so today we're talking about the Magnus Archives, which is a podcast distributed by Rusty Quill. I don't even know the whole thing.
Well, fuck off, because that was going to be my gender. We did say we were going to talk about Baldur's Gate, but we're cloud chasers, and we need to get that sweet Magnus Protocol SEO. So that's why we're doing it this week, and Baldur's Gate will happen, just not this week.
Work. So I'm Noah. My pronouns are he, him. You can find me on social media pretty much anywhere at the Jewish Jedi. And my gender this week is Burn Notice, starring Agnes Montague. I don't know what the plot of the show Burn Notice is. I'm sorry to any Burn Notice fans in the audience.
In the audience, in the room. As part of Burn Nation, just kidding. I think I've seen maybe one episode, and I do believe it was the crossover with Psych. So, yeah.
Wait, Burn Notice is like an extended universe?
It crossed over with the other USA Network television show of the period, of the era, Miss Psych. So, yeah.
Slay. Sorry to the Burn Notice fans. Oh.
Call me Agnes, because I'm about to, no, call me Jude Perry. That's my fan cast for Jude Perry, me. Anyways, hi, my name is Mel. I use they, them pronouns. You can find me on social media at Melvin Culpa. And my gender this week is, the K stands for Knockers. Like Martin
Knockers Blackwood.
Exactly.
That's so true. My name is Ollie. I use any pronouns. You can find me on social media at Ollie Fresh. And my gender this week is a podcast distributed by Rusty Quill and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike 4.0 international license. Anyway, that's it.
Okay.
I just think it's funny. Hey, someone named Annabelle Kane just entered our call.
What the fuck?
Her web connects us all.
Wait,
what? Shut up! I knew it! I knew you were gonna be in this fucking recording, you bitch! You are evil!
Claudia has entered the chat.
I'm sorry, Mel's face, I almost died!
Okay. Wait, no, because, like, if you think about it, her web really does connect us all. Like,
yeah. I listened to 200
Hi, Claudia.
I listened to 200 episodes of this podcast to do that.
Do you want to say how long it took you to listen to it?
Only 2 weeks. I listened at 1.6 times speed.
wait, like, you, like, recently, like, you just listened to this whole...
I caught up to it exactly as the Magnus Protocol came out.
Like last week, like 2 weeks, like last week, 2 weeks ago.
And I want you all to know, this was purely my idea. I surprised Ollie on Monday as well.
I was just about to say, Claudia, not to be the Annabelle Kane to your Annabelle Kane. I knew that this was happening. I knew that you were going to do this.
How did you know?
I didn't.
Because we talked about it like months ago.
Yeah, that's maybe where I got the idea, but I didn't think you would think that I would actually do it.
A bitch remembers.
No, but I will say your face, Mel.
Because I was like, I thought Ollie was joshing us with fucking, like, they had, like, entered the chat on their phone or whatever, and I was like, okay. And you showed up and was like, okay, you kind of gagged me.
I did too. No, I was gagged. I'll say that I was gagged because I was just like, oh, LOL, that's like a fun prank because like the character from the show. That's nice. Can we talk about this? No, because also I love being oblivious because last week when you guys were like, hey, like, you know, we should maybe talk about the Magnus Archives just because like Magnus Protocol just came out, it would be good timing. And I was like, I really, really wanted to talk about Baldur's Gate because I have so many thoughts about it. But like, okay,
So
I'll get back into this British journey, sure.
the reason
Only
I
to
have-
then realize that I had been lied to, manipulated,
could
distorted,
say-
if you will.
You're a lot like Jonathan Sims'ed in a way.
The problem is I am a lot like Jonathan Sims'ed in a way. I wish that I wasn't, but here we are.
Here's the thing. It's hard to talk about the Magnus Archives without talking about spoilers. So, because there's just so much content, the TLDR is there's a little guy who works in an archive and then fucked up things start to happen. It's an audio drama. It's really good. And if you don't want to be spoiled, stop listening now.
It's like Goosebumps, but for British people.
Oh. That's so
I
dark.
I will also say it is very worth not being spoiled. It's one
I agree.
it's one of those things where I think there are a lot of things where it's like, okay, you know, knowing the overall plot is fine. There were some moments in this series that I could not see coming, and not knowing that it was coming made it like one of the best media experiences that I've ever had. And I don't want to give the Magnus Archives that credit, but I do want to say that it is a really fun show to go into basically blind. So if you haven't listened and you're thinking about listening, you should stop this episode here and go do what Claudia did, which is listen to all 200 episodes as fast as possible.
Get a good podcast app. Listen at 1.6 times speed. Have automatic skipping of like the first, I don't know, 5 minutes or so of and last 5 minutes of every episode because there's so many ads and the intro is so long and you will
Okay.
get through it. I'm just saying. Also, no.
Claudia, and no, because you need to talk about what happened because you did that.
Okay, so
Spoiler.
you have to be.
Oh, also, Claudia's here. Her name is Claudia. Her pronouns are she, her. She's on social media at Kaludia says. Kaludia says. Anyway,
I am on
she's.
social media.
I guess her gender.
My gender.
I guess her
is-
gender is. Is it her web connects them all?
Yes, which in itself is a
Swag.
spoiler. In a way.
No, but tell them what happened to you because you had automatic skipping on.
Okay, so you have to be more careful than me because I got to the end of season 4 and John picks Martin up out of the lonely at the end of the penultimate episode of season 4, and then the next episode starts and it's them in the cabin and it's the beginning of season 5. And I was like, wait, they love each other now? The change has happened? What did I miss? And I was like, oh, they're going to tell me in like and then like, oh, like they're going to tell me like, you know, in flashback or whatever. I listened to 10 episodes and I was like, this can't be right. I'm so confused. And here's the thing. I know that Noah said like you should go in unspoiled. I feel like because of Tumblr, I knew certain things, just like I just like knew. And so when things happened, I was like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I wasn't like actually spoiled, whatever, but like, so like the change happening, the eye opening, I was like, well, yeah, of course that's gonna happen, whatever. I had to go back and listen to the season. You know, I missed the eye opening. And I had to go back.
Claudia missed the season 4 finale because she was so obsessed with getting it done fast.
Well, and so what I say is this is like, be conservative about how much you skip in the beginning of the end, because one could be, to be fair, it is the fault of my podcast player that it somehow skipped an episode and it said it was played and it wasn't. So
Or you could do what I did, which is where you get about midway through season 4, stop completely, and then have one of your friends bother you for genuinely close to 3 months about just finishing it because they promise it'll be worth it, but you're so frustrated with the plot at that point that you refuse to do it for literal weeks, and then you do it and you finish the show in like 14 days.
yeah, you know.
Noah is especially funny. I love Noah's experience because Noah literally Noah was like, oh my god, Martin's so annoying. I skipped an episode because it was Martin centric and I didn't want to listen to it, and I had to be like, it was the one in season 5 where he's like in
the
a
damn
cabin,
house.
like in the damn house, and I had to be like, no, it's like actually important to understanding his character and like his motivation. And then he was like, oh, fine. And then he listened to the last episode and was like, oh my god, wait, I actually love Martin. And I was like,
Here's
it took the whole show
I
to realize that he is that bitch.
I literally disliked Martin for 199 episodes. And then that's not true. I disliked Martin for 199 episodes and roughly up until a minute before the 200th episode finished. and then I liked him.
You're very Jonathan Sims coded in that way.
So true.
So we know Claudia's interactions with this show. Does everyone else want to go around and say like what their history is with the show and when they started it? And I will go first because I feel like mine is the linchpin to everyone here having heard it. No offense. There is like a minor renaissance of it going on. One, because it's like has a sequel coming out, but before the sequel was even announced, a bunch of people in our little niche on Twitter started listening to it. And I don't want to brag, but I do think that it's because of me. Because
It is.
I thank you. You're feeding into my ego. I started listening to the Magnus Archives in like 2019. Maybe not. I don't remember, but it was like the end of season 3. I think it was like the beginning of season 4 was when I started listening. And it like I had none of my friends. I was online, but I wasn't like participating in online discourse. Like I wasn't posting or talking to anyone. I was reblogging stuff, but that's basic, and retweeting, but I was basically just doing that. But it's so funny because none of my friends in real life listened to it. I didn't have any online friends really at that point who had listened to it. I was like, so I did not talk to anyone about this show that I knew personally until 2022 when Noah started listening to it. And then you didn't finish until last year. And I was like, please. And now suddenly Noah's listened to it and Mel's listened to it and now Claudia's listened to it. It's all these people who have listened to it and I don't know how to act. So I'm like, I need to not gatekeep. But I'm also like, you guys weren't there. You guys weren't there when we were trying to figure out what Martin's middle name was. You guys weren't there when we thought that J Mart was not like an actual thing that was going to happen. You guys were not there when we were all like, well, I wasn't personally like this, but people were like, oh my God, Martin's dad is Peter Lucas. You guys were not there when we thought Martin
dad is what?
You weren't there when people thought that Martin was influenced by the web and the big reveal in the end was that he had been manipulating John the whole time. You guys were not there for that. And I was. And I'm like, I was in the trenches and I feel like a grizzled veteran.
You were in the trenches and you feel like a veteran? That's kind of like, that's a little bit
it's kind of like
no, because I get it, guys. I get it now. I get why you guys wouldn't shut the fuck up because it's like one could say I am like Jonathan Sims'ed and that I can't stop myself.
So my experience of this show was in part informed by Ollie, but fun fact, I actually listened to the first 10 episodes of this show in the summer of 2021, right before I moved to Boston. I was driving back and forth from Reno, Nevada a lot that year because I lived in Reno, Nevada. Fun fact. And I listened to it in the car. I almost crashed my car because I almost fell asleep out of boredom in like the group of that episodes because they're not good to listen to in the car for me personally. I was like, good night, Moon. I'm out of here. And I got to episode 10 and I remember I was listening to it on the drive to Colorado. I was driving through Wyoming, listening to a statement about Trevor Herbert doing God knows what.
Bad.
Yeah. And I was just like, I'm bored. And I turned it off and I did not pick it up for like a while. And then I actually don't remember the exact series of events that catalyzed Ollie being like, hey, you should listen to this. But it did happen in the summer of 2021 or 2021. Yeah, summer 2021. 2022. I can't remember years. I had started at a new job and I had a lot of time to like listen to music and whatnot. And I had a longer commute and I was like, okay, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to listen to this fuck ass audio drama. And then I just didn't turn it off for like 3 months because I listened to it on my commute to and from work. I listened to it at work all the time to the point where there are certain events in the series I actually remember exactly where I was standing at my previous place of employment when they happened. And whenever I like would go do things in that building, I'd be like, oh my God, I was here when this character died. Are we talking spoilers? Can I say spoilers? Okay. So there was this, I was working at a lab at the time. and there's this one sink that was like the leftmost sink on our floor, and I was washing dishes there when Jurgen Leitner got clubbed to death, and every time that I would do dishes there, I'd be like, oh my god, I'm at the Jurgen Leitner death sink. That's crazy.
Shut up. I have a very similar experience of I would do dishes and listen to this podcast because life, and I will say that there is a sink out there that is the fuck, what is it called? The flesh the flesh sink, because I think I've listened to like at least 3 statements about the flesh at this damn sink doing dishes, and I'm like, yas, remember that time where that guy Tom Hahn and his fucked up little squad? Yeah, I do too.
That is so funny. It reminds me, there's a lot of like statements like that where I remember where I was. One that I remember with such clarity was that there was this road by where I used to live, and I would drive up and down it and just listen to the Magnus Archives. And I remember very specifically what stretch of road I was on when they were like, oh, this homophobic vase just ate this gay man. Wait a minute, there's a hole in the wall. And I was like, wait, because that's also like the first time, the end of season 1 is really like the first time something actually kind of like happens in the story, like it's happening to the characters and you're not just hearing about it. And I was driving and I kept having to like, I think I had to pull over into a CVS parking lot to go back because I was like, wait, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, it was very that. I'll share one more distinct memory, and then I'll sort of finish up like my experience with this show. The other one was, there is a statement in early season 1, I believe it's episode 19, about a guy who is essentially stapling a bunch of meat to the walls of his home. And I was listening to that outside the Tufts University undergrad campus because we had an event there that we were like all walking to, and I was walking from the Red Line to the Tufts undergrad campus and listening to this, and I remember being like, I meant to be afraid, right? Like this guy who's stapling raw chicken to his ceiling, and I was supposed to be like, oh my god, what was that meat pile made of? And I was like, okay. Anyway, like I don't really care. The other thing
that
about
is so
me in this
Georgie
show
coded
is,
of you.
I really was like, okay, whatever. The other thing about me in this show is I got to the end of season 3 and I was like, I hate this show. I don't like any of the characters and I don't like the plot. And then I listened to like half of season 4 and I was like, wait, I hate all of the characters and I don't like any of the plot. And then I put it down for like weeks because I remember texting Ollie. I was like, I can't lie, dude, like this show is making me want to kill myself, so I like cannot listen to it because it's just like, it's awful. They were like, and at the time, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ollie, but I'm pretty sure that I was like one of your only friends who was actively listening to the Magnus Archives at this point in time.
Let me say, not one of, the only friend. And I remember being, because here's the other thing, I've re-listened to the Magnus Archives probably 6 times, maybe 7 at this point, because there's something wrong with me. But the other thing too is, one of the things that I have done was that I will like listen to the whole thing. Like I listened to the whole thing the first time before it was caught up, and then I like listened to it again as it was still coming out. So I think only in like last year did I listen to the entire thing again after the show was finished. So it's, yeah, I feel that it's really, it's a very different experience. So it was kind of hard, not to be like it was hard to empathize with you, but it's a very different experience when you're waiting for it week by week as opposed to like listening to it all at once for the first time.
Yeah, but so they were like, please, you have to finish this season. I swear it's worth getting through. And I don't know what cracked, but I finally was like, fucking fine, whatever. And I was going to get a haircut, and then outside of my barbershop is where I listened to the Hello John, apologies for the deception moment. And I remember literally I finished the episode and I was like, this is the worst show I've ever listened to. I hate it here. Like, I was so over it. But then something changed, and I listened to season 5, and I was like, wait, this is good. And I have a lot of thoughts about like why that happened at that point in the show that we'll get into later. But I don't know why, because I talked to friends who watched the show, who like listened to the show, and they were like, oh my god, that part was crazy. And I was like, I was so fucking over it. Like, I don't know what was wrong with me. but like I could not. It was such a slog. But then I finished the show and I was like, this is actually, and I mean this genuinely, some of the best horror that I've like ever experienced. So that's my little tryst with the audio drama, the Magnus Archives.
I listened to the Magnus Archives when I was in a very challenging time in my life for the first time, and all my subsequent re-listens you will find do coincide with some of the worst moments of my life. But it is so funny because I was like, Jonathan Sims, he's so stupid and fucked up. He's so me. He's literally me. So then people that I knew started listening to it and were like, Jonathan Sims is an idiot. And I was like, you can't talk about him like that. Don't ever say that again. Do not. So, and then I got really embarrassingly protective over him.
When me and Ollie were like, oh, well, what character would Noah be? And we had some different ones, but I decided that Helen Distortion was the funniest. And here's why. Because, you know, when Helen to J Mart is like,
is a secretly a Tory?
Well, yeah, but no, when Helen is like, Helen Distortion, when Helen is like, I made you guys a honeymoon suite, that was Noah with you guys at the nest.
Okay, well, context for our listeners. They have no idea about the nest.
Referring to my previous house in Boston as the Distortion honeymoon suite is crazy behavior.
No, Noah, not just that, your broken ass couch that you had that you decided two people who had. Okay, so fun fact, we all went to Boston. Well, Mel and I went to Boston to visit Noah while he was living there. We went in and we were like, oh, where are we going to sleep? And he goes, on my couch. First of all, this is a small ass couch that definitely could not have fit two people.
We would have had to have lain on each other like Barbies to fit on the damn couch.
Yeah. But we go to sit and the couch immediately breaks. So he's like, you guys can just sleep on the floor in this empty room. So we had to put a bunch of blankets together and we affectionately called it the nest. And then, you know, sparks flew from there.
I need to defend myself like a little bit. Some context for why this was my living situation at the time, because now I own furniture. That was
Congrats.
October. Yeah, thank you. That was October. And I had moved to Boston in August of that year. When I moved there, I love that this Magnus Archives episode is now my Boston life story time. But when I moved there, I moved into a house that I'd seen very, like, basically I was kind of duped. And I was moving into a place that was furnished, and I got there, and let us just say that a home that was advertised to currently have 3 occupants actually had 6. And was not built to accommodate that. So I had to move the day that I landed in Massachusetts, which I did, to an unfurnished house on the other side of the city. And upon arriving there, the only furniture that I had for, I think, genuinely 3 months was a mattress and a desk. I was eating dinner for a very brief period of time off of the box that my mattress came in because I owned 0 other furniture. So when Mel and Ollie arrived, I had a incredibly rundown couch. In fact, I would suggest that to call it a couch is actually an affront to couches everywhere. It was more of like a horrible metal contraption that happened to have padding on it, and a dining room table that my mom bought me for my 21st birthday. And I was like, yeah, I can host people. This is a great idea.
Hey, but now we're engaged, so it's
yeah,
okay.
in a lot of ways. Also at the time, and then I swear I'll stop talking about this house, but it was just such like a wild part of my life. But at the time, I only had one roommate. He was a 32-year-old who allegedly worked as a bartender, but I actually never saw him go to work. So unclear what that was about. He later vanished. And then for a while, I was living with a 26-year-old who worked from home and moved in at midnight in the middle of January after texting me, Noah, are you awake? And then I was like, yeah, who is this? Because she hadn't given me her number before. And I was like, I don't know who this person is. But she was outside with a U-Haul at midnight. It was fantastic. I love that place. No.
This is like the statement with the person with their neighbor who gets replaced. I'm just saying. Anyway.
Amy Patel talking about Graham getting replaced. Okay. Is that what you're saying?
One other fun fact is that I have British people vocal deafness. in that I mix up all their names and all their voices. I thought Melanie and Georgie were the same person.
Claudia is like, wow, only one person has talked for this entire podcast. That's crazy.
No, it's not that. They like when they would mention names from like older statements and stuff, I would be like, I recognize the name, but I don't recognize what it was from. Maybe because I was listening at an insane speed, but to be fair, this has happened to me before. And so I legitimately, I was like, I think I know that person. So sometimes people mention shit and I'm like, I gotta go look it up.
To be fair, they name so many goddamn characters names that are like only 2 letters apart or written very similarly, and you're like, now why the fuck did you make that choice?
Yeah, and it doesn't help that Jonathan Sims'ed, real person, pronounces Gerard and Jared the same way.
God, that drove
like,
me nuts.
I thought Gerard Key and Jared Hopworth were the same person the first time I listened to it. And then I was like, when he went to go visit Jared Key and was like, oh my God, you're like a crazy ghost guy. I was like, wait, I'm just now realizing that these are different people.
It took me
I think I realized before then, but still. I can say Gerard Key is definitely easier to understand than Jared Hopworth. Can we get an amen in the chat for that?
The Jared Hopworth statement in the last season, I remember having to just look up the transcript because I was like, because he's going like, and then John will be like, that's interesting, thank you.
Well, because they tried to get an actor to play him, but they couldn't find anyone who matched, so Alex J. Newell, who voices Martin, just did the voice and they put a shit ton of filters over it.
Wait, for real?
Yes!
I didn't know that.
Anyway, Mel, Mel, I'm so sorry. We've all interrupted you a million times.
It's okay. So the thing is that I tried to listen to the Magnus Archives years ago, but I, much like Noah, was like, I'm so sleepy. British people honk shoo. That's my sleeping sound. They put me to bed. They put me to rest, to sleep. So I really struggled with that. That being said, I immediately was like, oh my gosh, I'm an interest in this show. And that was before I even knew the crazy shit. And then I was like, I'll get back to this later. And I listened to other things and I did other things, whatever. And then I start seeing this person and we move in together and we're living together. And then they won't shut up about the Magnus Archives. And then I was like, oh my God, that's so true. I'll try again. So then I started listening and obviously I finished. It took me a goddamn long time, mostly because I just was like, oh wow, I have to pause. I did a lot of shifts at work where I would listen to statements while I did dishes, and then I was like, okay, we're stopping. And then actually Ollie and I took a road trip out to see Claudia for her birthday, and we listened to the majority of season 4 on that drive because we were like, la 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 la, driving to New York vibes. So
wait,
yeah,
a fun fact about that road trip is also that you were surprising me. Just like I
forgot
you.
about that. I forgot about that we were surprising you. I was like, yeah, everyone knew what was happening there. But yeah, I don't know. This show is crazy pants wild style. I love it.
Ugh, it's a good show, except for when it's not, but then I feel like it is. I have to add, I feel like it's really funny because there are certain episodes, because I've listened to it so much, I have a very strong memory of all of the episodes. There are certain ones though that when I wanted all of you to listen, there are ones that I was like, I can't wait for you to get to this episode. And for a lot of them, it's like specific, like it's like there's just like a list of episodes that I really like that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to hear people's reactions to this. For Noah specifically, when you were at the end of season 4, like middle end of season 4, and you hadn't picked it up, I was like, please, I need you. Because first of all, Noah loves some existential, deeply esoteric bullshit like season 5. So I was like, I knew he was going to love it. The episode 183, Monument, which is about all the academics arguing. I'm like, Noah would love this episode. Literally, when I first met Noah, one of my first, like, within the first, like, month of knowing him, I was like, he should listen to the Magnus Archives for this episode. And I remember you being like, oh, I don't know if I can finish it. I'm like, no, you have to get to Monument. But I didn't say that. But I was like, there's an episode. Because I'm like, when the guy's like, mineral theory, you're still on mineral theory. I was like, that's so Noah.
The problem is that, like, I reached that episode and I did love it. I thought it was really funny. Like, it was one of my favorite episodes of the show because it's so stupid. Like, it's just a bunch of academics that are trapped in this fuck ass tower and they can't leave the tower. And I got to it and I was like, I texted Ollie because one thing that I did throughout the duration of the show was I did basically live tweet Ollie constantly and be like, oh my God, this thing just happened. And what I learned quickly was I didn't actually have to tell them what episode I was on. I could just name an event and they would be like, oh my God, statement 73, so true. Just like move on. I got to Monument and I was like, these fuck ass professors are trapped in a tower. And they were like, finally, the day has come.
Wait, Ollie, what were the episodes that you wanted me and Mel to hear?
Okay, so a lot of them, this is something I did want to talk about, is one thing I want to hear from everybody is like, what are some of your favorite episodes? But that being said, for you guys, I feel like, okay, it's hard to say because I remember so vividly for Noah which ones I was like, I want him to hear. I think, Claudia, because you sort of tricked me and didn't live text me your reactions, it was hard for me to say, here's what I want you to listen to, because most of the time I'm like, okay, as someone's interacting with the show, I can get an idea of like which episodes they like and what their taste is, and then I can be like, ooh, you're gonna like this one. I was right. The episode I know I was like excited. One of the episodes, it's like one of my favorites, because it's like, it's so fucked up, but it has like the beginning of one of my favorite like dynamics between two characters, is the episode in season 4. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I can't. It's Entombed, and I think it's 132.
Which one?
I want to say.
Which one is that one?
It's when John is like, okay, well, everyone hates me. I'm gonna go into the coffin and save Daisy.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Because I was like, I love that. I feel like, okay, first, the other thing too is I was like, when we first were listening, I was like, Mel is going to be, I knew that Mel was going to be obsessed. I had a feeling Mel was going to be into whatever Daisy and Basira had going on, and my thoughts were proved to be fucking true. I knew it. I knew it was going to happen.
Basira.
Yeah, I will say, way to go. Okay, Praxis. Okay, quitting your job. I was like, yes. Anyways, I will say about Daisy and Basira, I did almost go into like a catatonic state when we thought Daisy died. I was like, oh, it's so over. Oh, there's no reason to live. There's no reason to go on. My wife has gone and died in the war. Anyways.
Yeah, it was so funny because also the other thing too that I love about listening, when Mel and Noah were both listening, Mel, I was like, when after the unknowing, when it was like, oh my God, Tim and Daisy are dead, I was like, yeah, it's really messed up that they're both just gone. And Mel was like, wait, Daisy's actually gone? And I was like, yeah, it's really messed up. She like, because you can hear her getting sent into the coffin. I'm like, yeah, no, it's like, you just can't come back from that. And Mel was like, I'm gonna kill you with hammers.
You really entered your stranger era with the gaslighting.
Oh no, okay. I feel like Claudia's like just learned buzzwords and now is excited to use them.
I am.
You don't. That's not the stranger. If anything, that would be the spiral.
Okay, fine.
Clearly not all of us are cut out to be an archivist. I don't know what to tell you about that.
It's very Martin Blackwood coded of me in a way that I'm incapable of working in the archives, being incompetent.
That's not true. He's quite capable.
I know.
Claudia.
Yeah, he actually is.
That's the problem, is that John is an unreliable narrator in the first season because he is so blinded by his own fear that he projects it onto other people. Well, don't come for my man, Martin Blackwood.
And is the least capable of all of them.
That's true. I actually like Martin as a character, so.
Period. No, Jonathan Sims, I'm sorry, he is the autism creature covered in blood on the ground crying. Like, there's no other way to describe him. He's so pathetic. The entire time I was just like, Jesus, Lord, God in heaven, what are we doing, Johnny boy?
when
Yeah.
I was arguing this with Ollie, but I was like, in the end, people are like, oh, it's so sad. Like, I was just mad at him because I was like, girl, that was. I'm not even. I understand why you did it, but I think you were just stupid. Like, I know you were going through it, but we've all gone through it and not done stupid things. So pick yourself up and don't be stupid. I was like, I am also neurodivergent and a minor, and I don't do dumbass shit like that.
That's the funny thing. There's the one episode in the A Guest from Mr. Spider when John is like, yeah, people are always surprised that I actually was, a kid in the 90s. I think people think I'm older than I am. I like the idea that he's actually been a minor this whole time. He's 12 years old. No, but okay. I will say, I listened to the end when it came out. And I remember being like, because the last episode was set to come out, it came out, and it was 21 minutes long. And I was like, surely they're not going to wrap everything up in 21 minutes. And then it happened, and I was like, okay, well, they didn't. But then, so I was like really mad about the ending, and I was like, I don't want to listen to the show anymore. And then I re-listened to it when I had been when Noah had been listening, and I was kind of re-listening to it at the same time as him. And I found the end to be so much more fulfilling when I kind of knew it was coming, because it did feel like everything was building up to it. And I'm the only one here who's listened to it more than once. And I also will add, listening to this show a second time once you know what's happening is fucking crazy. Everything is so meticulously planned out from the beginning. It's like, there are things that happen in the first season that have you like, wait a minute, hang on. But I digress. It's funny because I feel like the end is everyone's, not everyone, but so many people's reaction to the last episode is being like, what the fuck was that? But then the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. And it's less like, oh, you're stupid, and more like, oh, this is tragic.
I will say, I do want to talk about...
No, it was stupid. Oh. I must add, he was stupid.
Well,
don't get it twisted.
The peak elements of a tragedy are you, the viewer, going, okay, girl, really? about something.
I have a couple like favorite episodes in mind, but before I get to that, I do want to say part of what made me like the show more was being willing to reframe it as a tragedy, because it works as a tragedy. If you don't consider it that way, it kind of doesn't work at all, because the characters just make increasingly dumb decisions as the plot moves forward. I will say, and I think we're going to talk about like broad limitations later, one of the things that I didn't like about the show overall is that despite it being a plot about a bunch of characters whose job it is to manage information and learn things, a lot of them were alarmingly forgetful throughout the show, which did annoy me a little bit here and there. Like a character would suddenly be like, it's weird that this clown is following me around, and it's like, it has my mom's face. I don't know what that's about, though. And I'm like, you can't be serious. 2 episodes ago, you learned about this. But I digress. I do have like a couple favorite episodes in mind. I think it would be fun to talk about. I feel like everyone says Another Twist is one of their favorites. So I'm going to be cliche and
Which
say that
one is that?
That's the one where you learn Michael's whole creation and where Helen Distortion shows up and is like, hey, diva. Yeah.
Okay. I forgot about that episode because this is something that I never thought about while listening to it until very recently. Is John naked during that statement?
Yes,
what?
He is. Next question.
Yes, he is.
Because he got kidnapped. He got kidnapped by Nicola Orsinoff. Well, by Breakin' and Hope. Nicola Orsinoff has him tied up, and they're lotioning him up. And I just never thought about the idea before. But I'm like, they had to be getting like up in his situation to be like, we are lotioning you.
Yeah.
Like, do you think they were just gonna stop at the shirt? No, like, I'm just like, fuck. And then he was there for like 2 weeks.
Getting
free
lotion.
my man. Or not 2 weeks. He was there for like a month.
Getting lotion.
Like, free my man.
Yeah, I also do like that canonically he has horrible skin. That was a nice touch that they were like, listen, we have to lotion you because it's just, we can't, you have to be helped. Buy a moisturizer. But yeah, I like that episode a lot for a lot of reasons. I will say, I think a lot of people do not properly contextualize the Distortion as a character. But I'm not going to say more than that.
What do you mean?
That you'll never know. I like that.
I'll say it. I'm not scared. I think sorry, I say this just because Michael and Helen, I feel like people get it with Helen, but don't get it with Michael, which is a weird thing. But I think that people think about the distortion, like the whole point of the distortion is that the distortion is not a character. You cannot know what the distortion wants or what the distortion is. And trying to make the distortion, you can make Michael Shelley a tragic character and you can make a Helen Richardson a tragic character, but like the distortion itself is not that. Like the distortion itself is not a character in that way. I think that a lot of people want it to be like this deep exploration into the distortion psyche and into like, oh well, the distortion was like feeling Michael's emotions or feeling Helen's emotions, and it's got this weird inner turmoil. I'm like, no, the whole thing was that it was using that to play to the person it's talking to's weaknesses. Like it is the distortion was not empathetic towards Sasha when she was trying to was not empathetic and trying to help her stop the worm situation. It was not empathetic. Like Helen was not being empathetic when she became friends with Melanie. It was all an act.
I just want to say this, and we'll get into it later. That is what makes the Magnus Archives good cosmic horror, because the forces at play are being personified for the purpose of harming the characters involved. They do not have actual human traits. They don't have human wants, and they don't have human feelings. They play on that because their whole goal is to generate fear and then eat people, which I respect. But like, that's the thing, especially about the distortion. When Michael Distortion says, "I am the throat of delusion incarnate," that is the only true sentence that thing has ever said over the course of the entire show. Unsurprisingly for me, a lot of my favorite episodes are distortion-centric. Another particular favorite is Helen's Nightmare Hotel, which I love for a number of reasons, but the primary one definitely is when John annihilates her and is like, Helen, was that a lie? I got chills.
Ate that up.
I was like, that was that shit. That was crazy.
I also have to say, when that happened, like listening to that live, like listening to that with other people, that was fucking crazy. Also, a fun fact, in that episode, Helen was like, you cared so much about Helen, you might not have even liked her. She was a secret Tory. And he's like, yeah, okay. But I remember literally these Google search analytics, the searching for what is a Tory, like had a huge peak, like an actual visible peak in the Google search, what is a Tory, because of that episode.
That's crazy.
Brexit defeated by Magnus Archives fans, not clickbait.
But I mean, like, but also there's that part of that scene is him being like, I wouldn't know if I would like Helen or not. You ate her. Like, you are not her. You consumed her whole cloth. There's something left of her for me to know. The other statement of mine that's a personal favorite is also The New Door, which is the introduction of Helen Richardson's character, because that episode to me has some really nice horror elements. There's something really, really scary about, like, first of all, not trusting your own reality, which is the Spiral's whole thing, but the fact that, like, she leaves through this door in the interview room, and then John is like, that door was not there. That is not an old door. I remember listening to that and, like, my jaw dropped. I was like, wait, that's kind of fucking crazy. Because, like, I don't know. It's not a bad thing that a lot of the horror in this show tended to be predictable. Because predictable horror is not bad horror. But that episode and, like, similar ones where the distortion was at play, I was like, okay, that cleared. And then finally, I believe it's episode 44 is where we first hear Gertrude's voice. Gertrude Robinson, former archivist, who is, I think, actually one of my favorite characters in all of media ever. I remember hearing her talk and being like, oh, this lady, like, meant business. I don't know much about her because at that point in the show, you don't know a whole lot about what she was up to. But I remember hearing her speak and I was like, I'm obsessed with you. And I was for the rest of the show.
This something I love about, this is a fun fact. For those of you who may not know, this is something that I have told extensively to the people in this room because I think it's so fucking funny, is that Jonathan Sims, real person, Johnny Sims, writer, was like, I have this character who's named after me. What if I made the person who had his job before, who he's constantly trying to measure up to, being Gertrude, played by my mom. And the guy who keeps telling me that I'm not ready, I don't know, I don't understand, Jurgen Leitner, played by my dad. And then in The Unknowing at the end of season 3, both of those characters have lines where they're like, Jonathan Sims, you don't know what you're doing. You're such a failure and disappointment. To the point where Johnny Sims, real person, said in a Q&A, he was like, yeah, people keep asking if I'm like okay, or if that's like a thing for my psyche, like if my psyche sort of contributed to that. No, that's just what I wrote. That's just, and my parents happen to play those parts. You know, it's whatever. I just think about that a lot. But no, Gertrude is some of my favorite statements are like any of the ones that have to do with like Gertrude and Agnes and Gertrude and the Lightless Flame. Like those are all just so good. And I think that story, I was talking to Claudia about this, I feel like that story's so weird and convoluted in so many ways.
I barely fucking understood it. I was like, wait, she's tied to her soul. Huh? What did I miss? To be fair, there's a lot that I didn't understand, but that's just because I'm dumb. But when I figured that out, I was like,
I don't think you're dumb. I think it's because you listen to it on 1.6 speed.
I'm gonna be real, I was not gonna be able to get through it otherwise.
But no, I think that whole plot, something else I love about this show is that I feel like there are so many threads that it makes the show feel lived in that I feel like you never, oh my god, threads, her web connects them all. But there are so many different threads and so many different things going on that don't revolve around the archive and don't all involve the same big plot. Like, again, you have the whole Gertrude is tied to the Lightless Flame. Like, the Lightless Flame are doing their thing. Peter Lucas is like, yeah, I tried to, like, buy a big apartment building, and then I got all fucked up. So, thanks, Gertrude. Like, the common thread is that, like, Gertrude was there, and things are happening, but so many plots and so many statements happen that make this world feel lived in and feel real that don't all revolve around our main cast or furthering the narrative. Things just happen. And it is a lot like real life.
That is one of the elements that I think really made the show work for me. The other thing is that statements never went out of their way to offer up that they were connected to other statements. So it was really fun to notice things in the middle of it. Cause the show basically never at any point was like, ooh, you might want to check out episode 12 based on what happened in episode 41. Those numbers are random, by the way. I don't know if those actually connect at all. But my point is, less trusting authors might have made it a much bigger deal that these things went together. And I think it was nice that listening through, you could find connections for yourself and also like notice little things in the middle of it. A personal favorite moment of mine where that occurred is in the finale of season 1, where unfortunately Sasha becomes not Sasha. And I didn't know that was a thing, but I immediately noticed that her voice had changed, and I texted Ollie and I was like, hey, this is weird, but like, did they change voice actors while they were making this episode? Like, what was that about? And they were just like, yeah, who's to say? And I was like, huh. Anyway, and then like an episode later, I was like, nah, something's up. Like, I don't trust this.
Horrible news. I did not notice for a hot minute because all the British people sound this. No, they don't all sound the same. I did not notice for a hot minute. I noticed because the other people around them were acting weird. And then I was like, wait, she does sound kind of different. And then I was like, oh, like she must have been replaced. But like, I didn't notice because they...
Can I tell you, you are one of like 3 people that I know who listen to the show who had the exact same experience. And then when they like did the whole reveal that it like wasn't Sasha, I was getting texts that were like, what? What do you mean? Where did she go? And I was like, you're just noticing this? She's been weird for like 12 episodes. Like, what are you doing?
I noticed by her behavior. I didn't really notice by her voice. And then, yeah.
See, one of the few things I knew about this show going in, I knew 2 things. I knew, one, hello, John, sorry for the deception. No context, no idea. I just knew that there was a man who said that at some point. And I knew that something happened to Sasha, and there was a character that the fandom, at least, called not Sasha. So I was like, oh, well, they're going to get Sasha back, surely. Like, it'll be fine. It's fine. And then they proceeded not to. And I was like, well, Sasha was my favorite character. Fuck y'all.
So that's really embarrassing for me because I fully thought until season 4 that they were going to get Sasha back. Like, until, like, literally, I thought, because until I caught up, I was like, Sasha's going to come back. Everyone in the fandom talks about Sasha so much. Surely she's going to come back. And then I was like, I think there's a part, it might be in season 3. I think it's in season 3 where Martin and Tim are like, Sasha's fucking dead for real. And I was like, I still don't believe you. But then I was like, wait, actually, I think. And then Johnny in one of the Q&As was like, yeah, no, when I like kill off a character, I don't like to do the whole like resurrection thing or like bringing them back because I just think it can be lazy and it's a way that writers like to sort of work themselves out of a hole that they've made. And I was like, wait, Sasha's actually not coming back.
No, okay, that was. I have a very similar feeling about that, about Gerard Key, because I was like, the fandom is obsessed with this goddamn little gay boy. Why the fuck? Hello? Because he's not in that many statements, and not to say that his impact on the story is not that deep, but like it isn't. Like we find out the tragedy of his family, but like he is not like a part of the Scooby Gang. Like I was like shocked that like a character like Georgie had so much more to do with the story and no one talks about her, or at least the people that I have seen online talk about this show. I feel like I've seen so much fan art of Gerard Key and like none of Georgie.
I feel like this happens in a lot of fandoms. I feel like it's because there's so much content for her or for another character, because there isn't anything, people are like, well, I have to make it. If I'm going to I have to fill in the gap here. I'm not saying that as a stan of Gerard Key, because unfortunately I am, but I actually don't have any of the context of the fandom. I pretty much only knew like things from afar. I knew very much that it was like, well, there's some bitch who's related to an eye, and I know Elias Bouchard. The girls, they want to fuck Elias Bouchard. I know that Elias Bouchard is some fucking crazy and fucked up dude. He's probably the villain, and everyone thinks he's a funny little guy. And that's all I knew.
The funniest thing about Elias as a villain is that he is like the most nakedly evil character I've ever encountered. From the minute you hear this man's voice, I could only picture him as like an old-timey cartoon villain, like with a twirled mustache, like having tied Jonathan Sims'ed to like a railroad and was like, "Mwahaha, soon the train will come and run over Jonathan Sims'ed on this railroad," because like he is explicitly so bad. Like he's just also, there's a whole section of the show where he is in jail. Like he's fully just like in a cell. And whenever anyone comes to visit him, he's such a bitch to them. Like, he's, like, evil and homosexual, and it's just like, I could tell you, but I won't. And it just, like,
but
turns
wouldn't
around.
you? Here's the thing. Wouldn't you do the same thing? If I had the all-seeing eye powers of Jonah Magnus, I would do the same fuck-ass thing. I would, okay, not murdering people, but, like, I would be a cunt and be like,
Bad news, that is kind of one of the qualifications for the job.
I know. I'm just saying, like, I would react the same way to being omniscient. I would be a cunt about it.
I just also love, though, that, like, he's fully sitting in that jail cell using his magic eye powers to watch John suffer over and over again. And he's just like, yippee, it got worse. Like, that's him every episode.
To be fair, isn't that what we're doing?
Low-key.
Okay, guys, no, this is another thing you guys didn't get, is when people theorized, like, when the show was coming out, people were theorizing, like, well, what are the fears? And people were like, well, what is the eye? And people were like, the eye is the people listening. It's talking about us. Like, people thought that, like, we were going to be, like, the listener was going to be the reveal. Like, there was a genuine time where people were like, what if the end is them breaking the fourth wall and being like, wait, the Magnus Archives is a podcast? There's a really funny Tumblr post that's like Jonathan Sims'ed being like, wait, so you mean my whole life is just a story? Who's writing it? And then it's like, well, that's the funny thing. Noah literally has
Ollie. Ollie, you know what I'm going to say? You know what I'm going to say?
No.
I'm going to say, in a way, it's like the ending of Supernatural.
No, stop. It's literally... it's okay, but here's the problem. I'm gonna say one thing about Supernatural, and then I'm not gonna say it again. Jonathan Sims and Dean Winchester have a very similar character arc in a way that many are not prepared to acknowledge. And I'm not gonna say anything more on that.
They would hate each other, but they're similar in ways.
Oh, absolutely. They'd be yeah, absolutely. Agree. Anyway, y'all remember when Tim Stoker died? That was fucked up.
I was pissed. I liked Tim.
Do you guys think about how Tim was supposed to die at the end of season 1 instead of Sasha, but then the voice actors had a conflict, so
wait, what?
They killed Sasha instead? Yeah. Yeah, Sasha was supposed to survive. Tim was supposed to get replaced.
Feminism
That's
lost.
crazy.
That's also fucked up.
Also crazy because it's fucked up because Johnny named Sasha after his wife.
Okay, this man has got to stop writing. Just
No,
put the pencil down.
And then Georgie is played by his wife.
No, I'm literally I'm like, Johnny, you know what people do to characters online. And listen, even if you didn't know how big this podcast was going to get, I've been in audio drama fandoms longer than some of you people have been alive. Okay, but whatever. Like, even
that
for
is not a flex.
I know. No,
should
I didn't say it was a flex. I
think on
didn't say.
that.
I'm just saying I have the knowledge to say that, like, they're even for smaller podcasts with characters, you don't want to use your real name, bud. You don't. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Like, you know, maybe it's a form of identity protection because if they Google your name, all they're gonna see is the yaoi fanfiction. But like, I was like, what are you doing, King? Anyway.
So true. I will say one thing about this podcast that happens to everyone who listens to it and sort of is what's life ruining about it is you can never watch or read anything ever again without connecting it to one of the 14 existential horror monsters that run this fuck-ass show. And I really wish that were the case, but as someone who consumes a lot of horror and a lot of media in general, it's actually unavoidable. I remember, so my favorite book of all time is House of Leaves. It is a horror novel about a lot of things, but one thing it is in particular about is a house that has a hallway of size that continues to expand and contract into a number of infinite spaces that may or may not be haunted by a monster. Go read House of Leaves, it's great. Anyway, I read that book before I listened to the Magnus Archives. When I listened to the Magnus Archives, I was listening to an episode about the spiral, and I was like, wait, this is a lot like House of Leaves. And as soon as I had that thought, everything I'd ever consumed in my life became ruled into the Magnus Archives. I can no longer watch movies. I can no longer read books or comics or listen to anything without being like, oh, because if you think about it, this is a lot like, and then it goes from there.
And it's also not even just like it's not even just horror. It's like everything is ruined for you. Like you can't watch anything without being like, wow, it's just, you know, it's a lot like, okay, sorry, I know I said I wasn't going to bring it up again, but it's a lot like how in its heyday on Tumblr, it was like Supernatural is a gift for everything.
No, literally.
And, like the Magnus Archives has an episode for everything. Sorry.
Literally. And it's not the only popular piece of media that does that, where you're just like, I have to compare it to. Doctor Who was like that for a while for me, to be frank. But I was like, fuck, it got me.
What fear is Monstrilio go into? Because I'm just saying, Monstrilio.
I have an answer.
Oh, well, I realized what you're gonna say immediately. Okay.
What do you mean? It's the hunt in the flesh.
Yeah, I realized that because, you know, Monstrilio has this whole thing where he's like, I need to bite things. Meow. Oh, sorry.
And he also grew from a piece of meat.
Okay,
he grew from a literal hunk of meat.
Okay, first of all, it was a little boy's lung. Second of all, anyways, my favorite,
which is, I'm sorry, is a hunk of meat.
Don't disrespect Santiago's lung. Anyways, he's more than meat. I like a lot of episodes from the Magnus Archives. So many of my memories with the Magnus Archives, are associated with a laundromat that I used to regularly go to. So I'm confusing a lot of the statements because I'm like, oh my gosh, that took place in a laundromat, right? No, it didn't. I listened to it in a laundromat. It did not happen in a laundromat. Most notably, sorry, I'm looking at a list of episodes as we speak currently. There's an episode where it's like this guy is talking about a ritual site that he like comes upon. That I was like, oh my gosh, that's so laundromat coded. Other little episodes I enjoyed. I really liked Entombed, like Ollie said I would. I liked Tim's statement about his brother. I also I will say that there's an episode where there's this kid and he's like, I'm fucked up and evil. It's in season 5. And Martin and John are like, do we have to kill this damn kid? I think that episode's funny. Is it actually funny? No. I don't condone child murder, I guess. Yeah,
neither does Martin Blackwood.
Yes. Any episode
or Jonathan Sims. They both were pretty adamant about not killing children.
Yeah.
In a rare W.
Basically any episode Basira is in, I enjoy. Because Basira is the character of all time. But yeah.
It's really hard for me to think of a favorite episode because there are like moments that I like, but then I'm like, oh, I don't remember when that happened. I will say I really like Jared Key's episode. Jerry. I'm going to call him Jerry because that's what he fucking wanted. Jerry Key's episode. I like so here's a fun fact about me, everyone. I don't actually enjoy horror that much, which is hilarious considering the amount of horror that I have consumed in various ways and that I work for a horror podcast network. And that I did this as a bit. It did genuinely scare the shit out of me. I had a Magnus Archives themed nightmare at one point. I was listening at crazy hours of the night when I shouldn't have, and it scared me. I was like, I'm not having a good time. I can get into some other reasons, whatever. I can appreciate horror as an art. It's just not like what I choose to entertain myself with when it's me in my leisure time. I say that, and then I make TikToks about fucking Jujutsu Kaisen. So anyway, I'm just saying, that is a horror manga, but contrary to popular belief, but that was one of the statements, Jerry's statement where he's talking to John, where I had like a genuine emotional connection with a character. There was another one, I can't remember what it was. There was another one that was, I want to say it was connected with the lonely, who tend to be my favorite ones, but I might be wrong, where it was really existential, and I'm gonna have to remember which one it was. But the one with Jerry, like, maybe it's because it was about a kid with mommy issues. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't. Jerry, I get why Tumblr.com loves Jerry, because I was like, this man was wronged. I also really liked the actor one, the one with the masks, because he was like, listen, I just do it because I love being on the stage. And I was like, oh, like, it was so, you could tell it was written from the perspective of people who also have been in the theater. It just, I thought that one was really, really cool. And I will say, actually, one of my favorite episodes of the entire series is the one about the prison. That one kind of ate, where it was like, maybe the system is bad.
I will say, one of the funny things about the Jerry statement where he is a book page, I actually knew about that statement long before I ever listened to the Magnus Archives properly. I just remember this while we were recording, actually, because before I went back to the show and like really properly listened to it, Ollie had told me about that statement and used no proper nouns of any kind. So I didn't know who any of the characters involved were, but they were like, basically there's this guy who is inside of a book and this other guy steals him, and these two people are like, hey, did you steal our friend who is a book page? And he's like, no, and then he sets them on fire, which like he wanted, so like it's fine. And I was like, and you're saying I should listen to this is like a recommendation. Okay.
Yeah, I remember being like, this is just esoteric and weird enough to convince you to be intrigued, at least. And I remember when you got to that episode, you were like, wait a minute, Gerard Key is the book guy? That also reminds me, just like some of my favorite statements are basically one of my favorite, two of my favorite statements I feel are kind of similar. I think it's technically 4 statements all connected. I love everything that has to do with Trevor Herbert. I think he's fucking hilarious. I'm obsessed with him. I think he's a badass motherfucker. I didn't love when he was like, I have to kill Jonathan Sims. And I love Daisy. I love Daisy more than I love Trevor. So when she was like, actually, I'm killing you, I was like, okay, fair. But the other statements that I just remember that I love are the ones with Father Burrows. And those are ones in I can't, oh my gosh, why can't I not remember?
It's in season 1.
I know it's in season 1. Desecrated Host is the first one, I believe.
That one was like genuinely.
Oh no, that's the second one. Desecrated Host is the second one, and Confession is the first one. So it's episode 19 and 20, I believe.
That one is like,
but
genuinely
I remember
sad. Like I was genuinely upset by that one. Like,
no, that's because it's so early on in the show too. It's one that's like, God, that was really fucked up. Oh, another statement I love that I just remembered is Manuela Dominguez, where she's like, "Hey guys, I'm different, and I have religious trauma. Anyway, I'm gonna build a really dark, evil sun." On a space station. Also, okay, I'm gonna say, basically all of the Daedalus Station episodes, I was like, I'm so bored. I'm so fucking bored. And then it all came together and I was like, wait.
I was not bored by those episodes. I did think they were so fucking funny though. Because like, so the first one happens and I was like, oh, that's kind of crazy, like being trapped on a spaceship. That's wild. And then the other two happen and I was like, I'm kind of obsessed with this fucked up spaceship that's just like kind of up there. The problem is that all three of the fears that it's associated with, I was like, me personally, I'd be fine. Rip to these other two people, but like I'd be okay. The other two statements that I love because I think that they're so ridiculous and funny. The first of those is Grifter's bone, because the concept of band so bad that you kill yourself is incredible. And the problem is that for a while, Ollie and I would like send each other music and be like, wait, this is so Grifter's bone.
Wait, which one is that one?
Grifter's bone is in
Countess Luann needs to join Grifter's bone, like do a feature on one of their
the band.
I just said
the
band.
Evil band that makes you kill yourself.
I do love the idea of the last thing you hear being "money can't buy you class." I love that. That's like what drives you over the edge. The other statement that I think is incredible. It is a Gertrude statement, and basically she's trying to find out information on the unknowing, and these people are like, hey, there's like some fucked up clown related stuff happening out in the countryside. And so she goes there and they're like, so the clown was normal. We do have this like really big evil pig though. And it keeps, I think, eating people. I'm not really sure. And she goes, that's really wonderful. You should encase it in a big.
Laughing at that one.
Well, because this guy's like, what do I do? Woman who clearly has experience with these monstrosities. And she's like, I have a great plan. Put it in a big cube of concrete. And then she's like, okay, bye.
Which is a plan she got from Adelard Decker, the other best character in this fucking show. People are obsessed with Jerry, and I love Jerry, but like, we do not get half as much fan art of Adelard Decker.
So
and
true.
he is objectively, first of all, he is that bitch. He is slay. He and Gertrude were collabing. Like, he's that girl. I don't understand why we're not all hopping on the Adelard Decker train. I remember when I was listening to it the first time, I kept being like, I can't wait for more from Adelard Decker. And then I remember being like, oh, cool. He got mentioned. And then they were like, and he died of illness. And I was like, okay.
No, literally same. I was like, fuck you for having one of your like two black characters be so fucking slay and then sent to disease heaven. Fuck you.
But isn't he the only one with like a natural death?
No, he's not of a natural death. He gets poisoned by a fear illness.
I can't remember.
But then he buries the guy in concrete. John Amherst, he buries him in concrete.
I actually say, but that episode kind of ate.
That episode because Adelard Decker's that bitch.
No, the way he's like,
that episode freaked me out because disease is one of those things where I'm like, oh god, I can't think about that.
That's like in season 5, when season 5 was coming out, how they had to be like, hey guys, we wrote season 5 and we didn't know a pandemic was going to happen. So please be aware that some of these themes may be troubling to some people.
When they're like, we didn't know that everyone would be trapped in their house, the lonely, and also there would be a pandemic, the corruption, and also everyone would be talking about police violence. Sorry. Oops. I remember hearing that and being like, oh.
Season 5 was like perfect COVID season, and they didn't even know it.
I need to say, cut out what I said earlier about what my favorite episode is. I just remembered what my favorite episode is for realsies. My favorite episode is the episode where there's that like housekeeper person who is like from a different dimension or whatever.
Oh my god, Anya, I'm so sorry that happened to you, queen.
Hashtag awkward, first of all. Second of all, I believe that's the universe that the Magnus Protocol is taking place in, is wherever the fuck she came from.
The way that you're probably going to end up being right, Mel.
Well, okay, here's the thing that I think about a lot, is that, like, the whole, like, Hilltop Road situation, like, the girls were, like, we were trying to figure out what the fuck was going on with Hilltop Road in like the 11th hour when they're like, we need to go to Hilltop Road. It was like it was like you would have thought that every single person's team just won the Super Bowl. Like the girls were screaming, crying, throwing up, jumping up and down.
Avengers Endgame ass.
It was like, no, we needed an Avengers Endgame style montage where all of the avatars came together to fight Jonah Magnus.
Simon Fairchild is like, hey guys. Except for British.
Yeah, it's just, and the other thing too is I think, like, I don't know, I'll say, like, one of my kind of complaints about this show is that I feel like, and it's hard to say if it's like really a complaint or if it's just like a personal preference, but I feel like they introduced the concept of universe, like of the multiverse, a little bit too late in the game. And I think the thing is that also, like, for people listening now, we are in an oversaturation of multiverse content, but that was not really the case when this was coming out. Like, the only multiverse thing we really had was like Into the Spider-Verse that just had come out recently, but like there wasn't really the multiverse craze that we see now. But it was just funny because I remember being like, we were all like, oh, what's going on with Hilltop Road? And that episode Mel was just talking about was like, oh, maybe it is like some sort of weird like piece of travel. But then Annabelle Kane is like, oh, actually it's like it'll fix everything. I was like, whoa, that came up really fast. Like, I wish the characters had a little bit more time. Like, I wish that had happened maybe 5 episodes before, so they could have had a little bit more time to process it and maybe talk out why they were feeling the way they were feeling about it. Because I think a lot of the issues that people have with the finale is that what John did, it makes sense when you think about it a lot, but it makes sense not like I think logically it makes sense, and it makes sense why he would do that, but I don't feel like there's enough of like conversation about it. Like, I feel like they decide pretty quickly they're not going to do that, or pretty quickly that they are going to do that and not going to kill everyone.
I think that's a part of my main issue with the series, and I think this is a thing I've been kind of pondering about certain pieces of media I've been consuming lately anyway, and it's also maybe just like the genre or whatever, is that like, so I think the kind of point of the series is kind of said, I think, by Elias Jonah at one point, where he's like, you know, at the end of the day, all these people that you connect to are going to be nothing. You simply were observing them, and you're going to throw them away. And in a way, like, that ends up being kind of the case. And also the case that, like, John, he never wanted to become a mystery that people had to solve, and then that's exactly what he becomes, and we never know what really happens to them at the end. And who could say? Then he becomes a mystery in a computer. And it's a tragedy, right? Like what Noah said, it's like, it's a tragedy, and there is inherent worth in a tragedy. I love a sad ending, whatever. To me, I'm like, so what's the point? What is it trying to tell us? And it's like, and along the way, I wasn't sure. Like, eventually I got very emotionally invested in some of these characters, but then by the end, I was very much like, what's the point here that it's trying to tell us? I think strongest moments were when it was like, these are these like, it definitely a big theme is about choice and how much choice do we have in the face of our fears. And I think it had the strongest one when it was talking about that and and thing of like, you know, when we participate in systems that are bad and we use our fear as a reasoning, like, is that right and is that okay? And when actually they do talk out the morality shit at the end, and I was like, oh, they kind of cooked here, like, with this moral dilemma. I that was where the closest where I felt the most meaning was. But for me personally, I think not with stories with sad endings or tragedies. For me, I'm very much like, okay, if there's all this strife in a story and there's all this horror in a world, you know, what was there meaning to it? Is like, what is the point of telling a story where at the end of the day everything you tried didn't matter? I'm like, because I don't know, sometimes consuming stories like that where that is the message to me makes me want to kill myself. And I'm like, oh, great, thanks. And I'm like, every story does not have to be happy or inspirational in some way, but I'm like, I at least need, I've talked about this, and actually in the relation to Jujutsu Kaisen when I talk about it, because that is a story where everyone is constantly taking the L just all the time, and you're like, is like, are we gonna get some meaning out of this other than people getting their ass beat, which is kind of what ends up happening in the Magnus Archives, is like, what is the meaning here other than people getting their ass beat? And it was hard to kind of tell towards the end. I did really like the thing of like, what are our actual choices? Ironically enough, I actually am on the side of like, I don't think John actually had a choice, and he had a choice in his fuck ass choice at the end, but like, I don't actually think he had a lot of choice in a lot of these circumstances. People, and he is obnoxious, but you can't blame him in a lot of situations. I just personally felt, I think also the point where at one point they're like, are there any entities of good things? And they're like, no, that's stupid. Felt very like, it has to be that way for the story and for the vibes and for the whatever, but it just didn't feel very, not realistic, because it's not. It just didn't feel, it's like, you're telling me that all of this negative can't exist without positive. Like, to me, when you're dealing with cosmic shit like this, it just doesn't feel realistic to me. It just feels like horror for horror's sake. But again, it's trying to tell a story, and maybe that's just my preference. But anyway, that's my thing. I think that I do like stories that involve like cosmic deities and stuff like that are not like humans or whatever, but I find the scary ones to be more scary when there are genuinely good ones and there are genuinely bad ones, and then there are some that can be go either way, and you just really don't know. And if all of them are just shit and bad, then it's like and it like, and there's nothing else in this world. It's kind of, I don't know, it sometimes it grated on me a little bit, but I was like, no, that's also the genre. So
I think my thing about that is twofold. One is that I do think the show would have been diminished by there being like this oh my god, what is the word that I'm looking for? Nope. No. I think the show would have been diminished had there been like good forces and bad forces, because I think that it had, like, thematically it wasn't about that. I think part of the reason why the ending feels a bit weird is because cosmic horror and existential horror is ultimately an unwinnable fight. And part of what I think makes the early show work is that the characters are not winning. They are subject to horrible forces that are beyond their comprehension, and thus they consistently fail to do anything about those forces. Even the humans who get involved in that are no longer people by the end. I think the other thing is, like, people are like, oh, the avatars have powers, and I'm like, part of it is the avatars are not human anymore. They are specifically no longer people. They're collective forces of will by these things. So I think the problem that I have with season 5 is, like, John and co kind of start to win. Like, they're annihilating the avatars, and they're making their way towards this thing at the very end of it. And then rather than be met with inevitability and failure, I don't know if that would have made a better ending, but I think it would have been a more thematically consistent one. They're given an out, and, like, at the end, they tacitly sort of, I think win is a strong word because obviously it comes at great consequence, but I don't know. I think when you introduce world-ending consequences into your story, and then the end of that story is you reverse the end of the world, it feels like kind of a cop-out. Like, you weren't ready to stick to your guns on, like, we're fucked. That's what happened.
Oh, See, I think that it actually is kind of more tragic the way that it happened. And this is kind of why I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about it having a potential sequel that covers what happened to, like, if what happens in the Magnus Protocol is like, oh, here's what happened to John and Martin, I'm gonna be like, it's not that I'm not interested, like, I'm still gonna be listening, but I'm like, I feel like it kind of undermines the end of the Magnus Archives. But I think something that's so tragic is that, like, there's no winning for John. He is not gonna win. Regardless of what happens, he is not gonna win. And Martin, who has who's given him everything, is also not going to win. And I think that the fact that, you know, the show ends not with the end of the world, but with the people in this world condemning those in another. And I think the concept of that is so tragic in saying, like, it is a choice. Do you choose to pass this suffering on to someone else? And to be fair, I do get the logic. I do get the, like as the girl boss squad was saying of Melanie, Georgie, and Basira, as they were saying, and Martin, he's an honorary girl boss. Like, they were saying, like, hey, we don't actually know that this is going to condemn those worlds because they may figure something out. And that's fair. But I do think that it is the struggle that John is saying is, like, John inherently believes that he has caused so many people pain. And he is saying, like, because his whole battle is, like, first of all, it's so funny because, like, he was like, I was in a coma for 6 months. And then he comes back from being in a coma and everyone's like, oh, fuck you, you dumb bitch, you weren't there. And he's like, yeah, I was in a coma. But he still feels like it's his fault. So I think that the ending is actually it is about choice. And it's about his choice to say, like, I'm not going to do this to anyone else. I'm not going to let anyone else die or be hurt because of me. And then it's funny because it is about choice. He chooses that, but that choice is still taken away from him. He is still just a piece of a machine. He still ends up not being to make his own decisions. And I think that is somehow way more painful in the end. And I think that lends itself to the tragedy more than if the world had just stayed fucked up.
So I do think it works on the level of being a character-driven tragedy, and I think I like the ending in that sense. I don't think it works as a good horror story ending, I guess, is my gripe about it. I think because Claudia's like, what's the point? And I guess my thing about that is I'm not sure that there is, like, a strong central moral, but I'm also not sure that classically tragedies really even have those. Like, I think this functions as, like, a Greek tragedy where it's like, had the heroes been better people and made better choices, and, you know, if these characters were anyone but themselves, this might have gone differently, but they weren't. And so this is sort of how things end up, because it already happened and you have no influence over that. So I think it works as, like, a character tragedy. My beef is more like, I almost wish that it had, like, committed to the bit and been complete existential horror where you have no resistance to that, but I'm also into that sort of thing. So I'm not certain that it would have made a better ending. It's just, like, a thought that I had. And in fairness too, it took me a hot minute to like the ending of this show, because for a while I was like, that is kind of ridiculous. And it pissed me off, but it sounded like it pissed a lot of people off. So I was not alone in that feeling.
I will say, again, it's something I said, like, as we've talked, but I really did not like the ending when I first listened to it. But again, re-listening to the whole show with what happens in mind kind of recontextualizes everything, because I think a lot of people, and especially, like, this happens a lot with, like, shows that get popular on Tumblr and get popular online in general, but people end up making, like, the classic joke of the Magnus Archives is a workplace comedy, which I think is funny, because I do agree, I love the meme, but I think it's like a lot of people play into this idea of, oh, well, we're rooting for our characters to be happy in the end, and when you go into, or we're rooting for, like, the characters to win, people weren't thinking about it as cosmic horror, they were thinking about it as a standard narrative, or as a standard, like, fantasy realism narrative. So I think a lot of people were taken off guard by the ending being so fucked up. So when I was in the fandom when I was listening to it, like, I was seeing all the meta people were writing. And I think the other thing too is when you have people who have that kind of stuff in mind, people sort of write their own endings and people fill the world in with fan fiction. So it gives you this expectation of what to expect, and popular interpretations become, popular. So when something happens differently, even when it's not bad, it just kind of challenges where your head is at. But that being said, even when you don't have that, I don't know. Regardless, my point is that listening to it from the beginning, knowing that it is a tragedy, knowing that whatever John does, he is never truly going to be in control of his actions and never truly going to be in control of the destination he reaches, it makes it feels so much more fulfilling. Like, I have come around to think it's actually a good ending. Which is not something I thought at first.
Not to make a mystery spot cast reference, but it is much like the experience of watching Supernatural, knowing what the shit-ass ending is. And in this case, I do think the ending of Supernatural is bad. The ending to the Magnus Archives, I don't think is bad. But there is, at the end of Supernatural, there's very much a thing of, like, Dean gets his ass got and he never got a choice or whatever, and they did it in such a bad way that I actually agree with all the girlies being like, actually this was a shit way for him to go, there was very much a pointlessness to this, in a way that was and they're both horror, whatever. I will say, I went into the Magnus Archives, I knew that it was a tragedy in some way. I expected it to be. I knew that it had sort of bittersweet, kind of weird ending, and so I wasn't surprised by it at all. I think I was more just like, girl, John, you're a dummy. I will say, though, the most horrifying part of that isn't, oh, maybe we passed it on to them. The most horrifying part and the scariest part to me is, like, when they propose, what if we just find a way to bring our world back to normal, and then we, like, basically we just kick the can down the road and, like, we stop them for now and then they might do this again. That to me was the most horrifying scenario, because it's basically like they never leave, and to me that is cosmic horror. I was very much like, and then when at the end Basira is like, I don't know if you're listening or whatever, and the idea, what I hope the Magnus Protocol talks about is, like, the most horrifying thing is that you can never defeat them. They will always be there. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter what universe you're in. Those fears are always going to be there because they are built from our thoughts or whatever. They can be a reiteration in any way, shape, or form. To me, that's the most horrifying part, is, like, you cannot defeat them in any way, shape, or form. That's the scary part. I did think it was funny when Annabelle was like, well, RIP to the other ones, but I'm the only one who's conscious. So, anyways, she's like, I realized all of them were stupid. So,
when the lighter finally became relevant, the girls were shitting and farting and screaming and dying. Like, that was like, it was that no, because the thing was too with the lighter that John has that he got so early on, people were like, oh my god, the lighter is going to be like a big thing, and John kept, like, not thinking about it. And it was funny because at first it was like, oh, well, it makes sense because it's just a lighter that he has. Like, why he doesn't know he's in a horror podcast. Why would he think about it? But then it's like, was the web manipulating him into not thinking about it, to, like, look over it? And that's kind of my interpretation, is that he was just kind of like, I think the scary thing too is that and they cover this a little in, like, season 4 especially, where John is like, have I been manipulated, or has this been my own choice? And it's like, ultimately, regardless of if whatever choice he made, he was manipulated into ending up a certain way. But the question of, like, were any of his choices his, like, how much control does the web have over someone? I think that's a really interesting theme too that played into the end, that played into the whole story, like an overarching fear.
And, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I did forget about the lighter, so when it came up I was like, oh yeah, the lighter. And I did not realize how important it was. I was like, shit, guess I was not paying attention. Shout out to me. But I will say, I think that is probably one of the most compelling parts of it, is, like, what really are our choices? Because also the web is built from our own fear, in a way. It's an Ouroboros in a way. Anyways, I think that's also why some of it was a little predictable for me, which is fine if it's predictable. I don't care, actually. Same with Noah said, I don't actually care. I think that's why I was interested to know what were some of the moments, Noah, that you said surprised you, because I wasn't actually surprised or shocked pretty much ever. When they were like, oh, actually, the villain was the web, I was like, yeah, girl, I could tell.
Well, I mean, that was definitely one of them for me, just because I was like, well, I mean, it was less of one as soon as Annabelle Kane was like, I've been in this weird mansion. Who knows what I'm up to? I was like, oh, slay, okay. Let's see. Other moments that I found, I don't know. Now I can't think of, like, really any, to be honest. I had a lot of moments that I was like, oh, that was really cool, but I guess shock might be the wrong word. Yeah, I don't know. There were a couple that like actually did scare me, which I think we should talk about in a second because I'm curious like which of the fears you guys are or are not afraid of. One of them that did actually give me like real fear, and in fairness, it's because I was really high. But there's this episode, and this gentleman is like, the darkness in my room is trying to eat me, but if I stay under this blanket, I will be totally fine. And at the end of the episode, it's like, actually, you are not totally fine. And he gets fucking murdered by the darkness. And one time I did a lot of edibles, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was like, I'm gonna get fucking murdered by the shadow on the wall. Like, it's so over for me. And then I kept trying to go to bed, and I was like, surely if I go to bed, and I was like, but that's what he thought. He wasn't safe any minute now. Like,
that one scared the shit out of me. I was like, oh, it's getting me. And then I had that nightmare where I like woke up and I was like, oh, my foot, it's out of the blanket.
I had a nightmare that I had to talk to Jonathan Sims'ed. Just kidding. That would be a nightmare though. Like, for real.
That's like Tim Stoker.
So true.
I feel like this show was a lot like the trolley problem, except for there was only one track the entire time. Like, the whole thing was that there's an illusion of a second track. So, like, I don't know. I was just vibing with it. I enjoyed the ending. I had no problems with it on my initial listen. I was just like, oh, wig. Anyways. And I think that also, I think that's a little bit of having the benefit of like knowing that there's like the Magnus protocol and there's going to be more perhaps connected to it. We don't know, of course, of how connected it's going to be, if at all. But I was just I was satisfied with the ending of like, I will say the multiverse thing, I much like Taz Amnesty, it kind of like took me by surprise where I was like, what? No, wait a goddamn minute. What are we doing here? How did this become the plot of the movie? But I don't know. I liked it. I will say an episode that freaked me the fuck out was Lost John's Cave. Is that what it's called? I almost called it Long John Silver's.
That one was one of the first ones I was like, oh, this is fucked up and crazy.
I listened to that episode at the laundromat, so of course I associate with the laundromat. But I went to the laundromat and I went home and I continued listening to the episode and I was putting laundry away by myself, but I was in our closet listening to that episode and that was so fucking scary. I don't know why I did that to myself. Never again.
I will say,
yeah.
I will say the multiverse thing, I think it didn't surprise me because when they were like, well, these entities, they come from outside of our reality. And then they were like, well, there's other realities. I was like, oh, well, we already established that. I guess, I don't know. I guess I've consumed enough that I was like, okay. And who was shocked? I would be shocked if we had major cosmic entities and then we didn't have other realities. I almost was like, no. Yeah, of course. Duh.
You know, actually, what the biggest shock to me in this series was, we've already talked about it, but I do need to reiterate how shocking, how this was, like, literally my 9/11. I'm sorry. We've already talked about it in this episode. However, I need to reiterate that this was my fucking 9/11. Helen Richardson being maybe a Tory, it was so over for me.
Maybe she deserved it, one could say.
Tories are the scariest of the fears. Like,
scariest thing in this fucking podcast, I'll tell you that.
Tories are the
new fear just dropped.
Yeah, Tories are the 15th entity. I will say personally, I thought the multiverse thing was really dumb. I'll say it. I thought it felt weird and out of left field and such like a weird way to end, to be like, guys, there are other realities. And I'm like, okay, I'm certain that there are, but this podcast has been like 5 whole seasons of really interesting horror, and then at the end to be like, who knows where they're from? I'm like, it doesn't really matter where they're from. And it also felt very weird at the end to be like, there's a nice little exit valve that we can just flush and all of the horror will just sort of leave. Now, the best part about the multiverse thing is the fact that canonically, after everyone is safe, oh my god, Ollie, what is the name of the Avatar of the Vast who's hanging out all the time? Is it Simon Fairchild?
Fairchild,
Yes,
that they all beat the shit
yes.
out of him.
Blue fucker.
Canonically, at the end of the Magnus Archives, when everyone is safe from all the fucking entities, they beat the fuck out of Simon Fairchild, and that is the best part of that ending. Is literally they're like, "Did you hear what happened to Simon Fairchild? I hear they like beat him to death."
I also like the idea of Simon Fairchild, who's like old as shit, suddenly like has no powers anymore and is like, oh no. Another one of my favorite Tumblr posts that's like Simon Fairchild after getting someone to go up somewhere really high. Oh, Simon, you son of a bitch, you've done it again. Like, I think, okay, the one episode with the oh my gosh, why can't I remember, the cable car, where it's just Simon Fairchild shaking a cable car. That shit was funny.
The fucking cable car is one of the funniest episodes because they're like, I was in a cable car and then all of a sudden I was still in the cable car. Like, here's the thing, and I think this is a good point to open up this discussion into, because some of the fears to me personally are just not that scary. Like, so I'm just to get us started on this for a recap for all involved. I figured I would just list out the 14 of them so that we all know what we're working with. So the 14 canonical fear entities in this show are the buried, the corruption, the dark, the desolation, the end, the eye, the flesh, the hunt, the lonely, the slaughter, the spiral, the stranger, the vast, and the web. Many of these, to me, do carry some degree of like real fear. Several of them just don't on any level, and one of those is the vast. The concept of the vast being scary is so fucking funny to me. Because, and it, mind you, this is specific because, for example, the ocean being a piece of the vast, that does fuck with me because it's very deep and very dark. Space, do not care. I'm gonna be forced to do infinite skydiving. Where do I sign? Like, the cable car, I'll take my seat. I'll chill out. I don't really care. Like, whatever.
Do you guys remember when Peter Lucas was like, Martin, I need you to read all these statements about the extinction? And Martin's like, whoa, this seems like a really big problem. And then Elias in the end of season 4 was like, it's actually not. It's actually not, you dumb idiot.
And then in season 5, they're like, well, actually it was real. And you're like, what? Elias, you liar.
Well, it's kind of his that's kind
Well,
of his
that's
thing.
why he's not called
That is his thing.
He's not called a truthist.
I will also say
A truthist.
Not he lied. She believed he lied. God.
So true. I will also say one of the other fears that I'm like, I really wouldn't mind. Something is wrong with me because the hunt, I'm like, I would win. I would simply like, the problem is that the hunt would get the better of me and I'd be like, no, I can get into this. I'll chase people. I'm not above that.
Okay, so
The
there's
Another episode. I'm sorry, the other episode about the hunt I just remembered is Murder Club that Basira reads, where they're like, oh my god, we were just hanging out and then some guy tried to break in and we killed him with knives. And then we thought maybe let's just all kill each other.
That's
and then
an
John
episode
gets
of
back from
RuPalp's.
America in that same statement.
Okay, speaking of America, the fact that Johnny Sims, a real person, got bullied online for getting a bunch of details about the United States horrendously wrong. Not to mention a personal favorite moment, Boys, Idaho. Thank you, Gertrude Robinson, for that.
I had to pause it for like an hour. I was laughing so hard. I was like, I hate British people.
No, that was the scariest part of the fucking
it's
podcast.
so
It was
funny.
fucking bone chilling.
Wait,
I also like Johnny being like, I'm gonna put the the Usher Foundation, which is like the American version of the Magnus Institute. He's like, I'm gonna put that in Washington, D.C. I'm like, girl, get out. No, get out of here.
Here's my hot take. I don't think the eye is actually that scary. The eye is not scary.
Absolutely not. I agree.
Here's my thing.
It's not at all. In season 5, where they're like, "What if you got into the shower and there was a camera there?" I'd be like, "Oh my god, am I live?"
Okay, well,
guys.
to be fair,
to be fair, we're also 4 people who are deeply online and visible. So
this is So this is my thing, and I think that like. I want to say they get into it at some point, but I was thinking where I was kind of like, it's very interesting that they're positing that the most powerful one, supposedly, it's really the web, but that the most powerful one is the eye, and that the eye is getting more and more popular. I was thinking of this from a lore perspective, that the eye is getting more and more, not popular, powerful. He builds the Magnus Institute as humanity and sentient human beings start to have like media and are able to write things down, record things, whatever. It would have almost been, obviously because this is an audio format, they couldn't go further, but I feel like the eye getting more powerful as everyone has a phone in their hands. Actually, the episode when they're in kind of the eye's domain and the woman is like, there's cameras everywhere and they're watching me, I was like, I thought that was the most compelling, because I was like, the fear of the surveillance state, that actually is scary. Like, and I was like, and we actually live in that, and we do live in a society. I was like, that is the part of the eye that is the most scary. I also, between, not the eye and the spiral is the one about manipulation. I was like, well, I have a fucked up and crazy, I have a fucked up and crazy family, and I have been on social media since I was 15. The eye and the spiral cannot scare me. Someone's gonna tell me, someone's gonna gaslight me. Well, my mom does that every day. Grow up.
let me just say this. The spiral, in terms of like people manipulating you, okay, whatever, sure. The spiral, in terms of a physical distortion of space from which you have no way in or out, that shit is actually quite scary. And let me just take a minute to plug 2 things that both fall into that category. The first I already mentioned is House of Leaves. That book is as spiral coded as it comes. You've got, this bitch has everything: an unreliable narrator, a second unreliable narrator, a third unreliable narrator,
more sexist unreliable narrator.
Yeah, Johnny Truant, kill yourself. A horrifyingly interesting distortion of space from which the characters are driven mad. Seriously, go read that book. Anyway, the other one is Skinamarink, a 2022 experimental horror movie wherein 2 children awaken in their home to find that all the doors and windows out of their house have vanished and their parents are gone. Both of those play very hard with this concept of space not operating as it's meant to, and what happens under conditions of what Shirley Jackson, author of Haunting of Hill House, would call absolute reality. It's actually really scary. And like, I love it, but that actually does fuck with me.
I was going to say, speaking of something where there's no doors and you can't leave, the one that I personally find the scariest, and one of the ones that I feel like a lot of these like are scary, but I'm like, when I hear about them, I'm not really scared. Not true with The Buried. The idea of being in an enclosed space, I will say consistently, the Buried statements are the ones that I'm like, oh, this is bone chilling. I feel sick to my stomach.
The Buried and the corruption for me is like, oh.
Yeah. No, I will say Mel mentioned Lost John's Cave earlier. I'm like, that is one of the most fucked up statements. And it's like, I think that like the one with John and Daisy entombed when they're like in the coffin, that is such a good statement, because it's like so the acting in that episode's also really good. I'm like, man, you'd think they actually put those 2 into ground. They put them in oh my gosh, a hydraulic press. Ooh, I want to put Jonathan Sim's character in a hydraulic press.
I will say the best Buried episode, I believe it's episode 2, Joshua Gillespie, shout out to you. You are the only sane character in the entire Magnus Archives universe, because he's like, I keep waking up trying to unlock this box, so I'm just gonna put the key in a Tupperware full of water and put it in my freezer, and
literally.
It works.
No, literally, I was like, you are built different. I was like, finally.
The fact that the fact that he never comes back, that's the last mention of him. I'm rest in peace to like John and Martin and whoever, but like if he had shown up, if they had run through his domain, he would have been like, okay, cracks his knuckles, let's fix it, let's go figure it out.
Think Basira,
like, let's stop this.
Well, Basira kind of did the same thing during the unknowing. She was like, okay, well, I'm built different, I'm just gonna logic my way out of this. And I was like, yeah.
She said, what if I leave?
What if we just leave?
She was literally like, go pick. She's like, go piss, girl.
No, I will also say, I think that there's this whole thing of that, like, maybe all the fears are connected to each other in a way. Because I think the issue of, like, being trapped in a space, like the spiral, and then also the buried is a similar reason to why the vast is scary to me, because it's not that, like, the space itself, although I am afraid of heights, it is that you are trapped there infinitely. I think that's also why the space episode, the ones on the one on the Daedalus where the guy is by himself, scared the shit out of me. I will also say, if you like the Daedalus episodes, you need to go listen to a podcast that came out before the Magnus Archives, Wolf 359. That show is funny, and then it's fucked up, and then it's scary, and then it just wildly flips between the... You have to listen to Wolf 359. And a quick plug for another horror podcast that if you witnessed the thing that happened on Twitter where the one Twitter user who like Trigun recommended that book and what the book How to Lose the Time War, which is a really good book, apparently that Twitter user heard about that book from the Q&A of a podcast called The Silt Verses, which I started listening to after the Magnus Archives. Johnny Sims is like in a random episode, by the way, which gave me a fucking jump scare, because you know what he's doing in that episode? He's working with his coworker inside some form of institute, and they are recording statements about experiments that they're doing on people. And I was like, Jonathan Sims, what are you doing here? I mean, he's in a lot of podcasts, but it was just very funny to me. But actually, an episode of the Silt Verses that I just listened to was one that was about like where they are trapped in something. In this one, I think there's this guy who he gets trapped by this god into thinking, like, he gets trapped in his own house into thinking that his own house is a performance and he can't leave because he always has to perform. And like that once you enter the house, you're on the stage, you're in the theater and you can't leave. And it was actually fucking scary. I was like, oh, and he's like narrating it as if he's reading stage directions the whole time. I was like, oh, this kind of eats. Anyway, listen to the Silt Verses. It's a really good podcast. Actually, so I don't know why. I think you would really like the Silt Verses. You might actually like it better than the Magnus Archives.
I tried it once and I didn't like it.
Really?
It was years ago, so I don't actually remember why I didn't like it, but I remember being like, oh, okay, and then turning it off forever. But then again,
very good.
I did that with the Magnus Archives, and here we are today, so who knows?
Yeah. Anyways, I think the vast is scary, because it's just like, well, guess I live like this now. Like, when the guy in the Daedalus was like, guess I live like this now, I was like, oh, he's just like me for real.
The problem with the Daedalus statements to me is that one of them is like, and there was a really big hand, and it was like so big that like it like covered space. Me personally, I'd be like, damn. Anyway, like that just like does not bother me. I will say the lonely doesn't necessarily bother me, except for the episode about the woman who becomes lost in like the infinite suburb and is like, I'm pretty sure if I sleep here, I will have to like stay here and kill myself. That fucked with me. Although I'd be lying if I said that that was the best lonely moment, because the real best one is that Peter Lucas was like, I'm going to do a ritual. And so he just builds like a bad apartment complex. And instead of Gertrude's usual plans of like ritualistic magic or like having to do some weird shit, she just calls the Guardian and is like, yeah, this apartment complex is like super terrible. And it gets like shut down by the city. And that's that.
Okay. Also, I'm sorry, the fact that doesn't even get an entire episode dedicated to it, it's just something that he mentions to Martin, I think. And it's like, oh, okay.
Peter Lucas being like, what if I just trapped people here because I'm a landlord? That he's the most evil character by far. I mean, we have Jonah Magnus who's killing people, and we have the entities, and we have, you know, the cops, but the evil landlord Peter Lucas. No, but that episode also, it's a real testament to the power of journalism that she was able to get his ass, and she wouldn't have been able to do that today. Much to think about.
I will also say, one thing I like about Jonah Magnus and about like the eye in general is that pretty much every other avatar has like a mechanism by which they can kill or harm people. Jude Perry, who we haven't even gotten into really in this episode, is like, I can set you on fire. Any of the avatars of the corruption are like, get disease, bitch. Like, there's a lot of things that they can do, and then avatars of the eye are like, I do have a gun. And that's kind of where, like, they're like, I know everything about you, and what I know is that I have to shoot you with a human weapon because I have no other way by which to kill people.
That's why Gertrude adapted, overcame. She had that motherfucking thing on her. You know, she was doing that. You know, she was like, I'll turn. Remember when that one guy from The Lightless Flame was like, I'm here, and she was like, I will literally turn you into
fucking sawdust. Yeah. I saw
you.
this Tumblr post, and I can't remember who posted it because it's been like 2 years since I saw it, but it was like Gertrude Robinson walked up to the existential horror and was like, yes, I am locked in here with you, but more importantly, you're locked in here with me. Like, she was...
And you know Johnny Sims has had to have based some of that on his real mom. Like, you know that some of that was coming from her. I'm like, because I feel like Gertrude is the most solid character in the whole thing. Like, the whole, like, she is so, like, she's the one who I immediately got her, like, her personality, her whatever. I think it's because we are learning about the shit that she did, and that's what builds the entire thing. But, like, I was like, she was the most built out character at first for a while, for me at least.
I will say this, and then I'll shut up for a hot minute, but I do just want to say that one of the funniest moments in my listening to of the Magnus Archives was a post that Ollie sent me after I listened to Another Twist that was like, I know Gertrude, space rude, take Michael to Stanikov land. And that became like something I couldn't stop saying for months. I'd be at work with my coworkers who don't know what I'm talking about. I'd be like, I know Gertrude ain't take Michael to Stanikov land. And they were like, where the fuck is Stanikov land? Who is Gert?
I know Also, just the fact that it's spelled Gertrude, like, we call her Gertch in conversation. Like, whenever we talk about the show, like, 9 out of 10 times we do call her Gertch. It's been hard to call her Gertrude for this episode. Anyway, the fears are scary. I feel like I'm, like, I don't know, not to be like I'm immune, but I wouldn't be scared, because I would be like, guys, I'm incredibly sexy and funny. They would just like me. Like, I don't get it. I like, that's my problem, is I'm like, if I met Peter Lucas, we'd just hang, and I'd be like, okay, and I'd be fine.
Unlike you bitches, I am deeply afraid of many a thing. I would say I am very afraid of the eye. Being known, being understood is very scary to me. Bell Hooks may have said that to be loved is to be known. I want to remain unknown. So, fuck you. I just think that all of this stuff that it says about surveillance just hit a little bit too close to home, too real. And that I found scary. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's my takeaway from this series, is that the real thing that we should be scared of are the friends that we made along the way. So, take that as you will. I don't know. I think surveillance. I've been reading a lot about state surveillance is the problem. So I think maybe this is just like a hindsight thing where I'm like, I know the eye is freaky as fuck. I don't like Elias Bouchard. I don't like the racial politic behind at least Jonah Magnus's whole dealio. Also, he's like, oh my god, we have to create prisons. Like, he is. He's like, oh my god, yes, prison slay. And so I think
he's like,
that
the Panopticon?
just...
What if I
literally
did it?
Foucault is like, oh my god, I just shit my pants. Anyways.
Jeremy Bentham didn't get his head shrunk for this.
No, literally. Anyways, I think we need to talk about something. Shit, I forgot the intro to Fantastic. Oh, it's welcome. So, I guess for this special edition, I'll say sorry for the deception. my friends.
I should have said
Welcome to
that. Fuck.
Fantastic.
First of all, it's apologies for the deception.
Okay, fine. Apologies for the deception. God dang. We're doing Fantastic TMA edition. I have so many is the problem, and I'm trying to like root it down. I think I'm just gonna share with you this after we're done, because I swear to God, I found like 50 million different, just horrendous fan casts for this show. For those of you who don't know the segment Fantastic here at RuPalp's Pod Race, a Star Wars podcast, I have scoured the internet looking for some of the most creative, sometimes groundbreaking, sometimes just like horrendous fan casts. And the Magnus Archives has this fun thing where the fan casts are wild. Like I couldn't find a single one that didn't have at least one choice where I was like, oh, everyone is so creative. So the premise of this segment is I'm going to name an actor, and you guys are going to guess what character that people on the internet have fan casted this person as. Are you guys ready?
I'm terrified.
Yes.
I'm so excited.
Okay.
I'm
gonna-
excited to see if I have like an advantage because I was on the internet while I was in the fandom while the girls were coming up with their crazy fan casts. So I'm gonna see if I have
I feel like
an edge on
I
you
feel
guys.
like this segment is sponsored by The Stranger in a way. You know, with
I
the
feel like
uncanny.
Nicola
Anyway.
Orsinoff would love this. Nicola Orsinoff would love this segment. I'm gonna start kind of easy. One that seems kind of obvious. Bill Skarsgård.
Jurgen Leitner.
No, you said that's.
Wrong.
Wait, which one is Bill?
Bill Skarsgård is Pennywise.
Oh.
Yeah.
Michael Afton. Shelley. Fuck. Sorry. Michael.
Wait, that actually
You are
could
correct.
make sense. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay.
You are correct, Noah.
I guessed him because he has like weird, off-putting face. So I thought that he would go good for that. That's good. Okay. I think that's actually.
Yeah, put a long blonde wig on that bitch and move on.
Guys, I have to be honest. I think that is the first time I have ever guessed Fantastic correctly.
We did it, Joe.
All right, we're gonna get a little interesting with this next one. Hugh Laurie.
Jonathan Sims. It's
No.
gotta be something cursed like that.
It's
Elias
not Jonathan Sims.
Bouchard.
Not Elias Bouchard.
Is it Peter Lucas?
No.
He would eat as Peter Lucas, actually.
Jude Perry.
No.
Agnes.
I'm not J.K. Rowling. Christ.
Okay. I want to say it's not Peter Lucas. It's not Elias. Who are the
Yeah.
other?
Is this an
Is
old
it Simon
man?
Fairchild?
It is
Wait,
not Simon Fairchild. Although I think that
is
would
it
be a
Trevor
really good...
Herbert?
No, it is not Trevor. Trevor Herbert.
Trevor Herbert.
Is it Tim?
It's not Tim. Jesus
Okay,
Christ!
no,
What?
No, because
Dr. House
I
is
love-
Tim.
Hold on. I love the concept of the working at the fucking archive, and it's like a bunch of people in their like late 20s and early 30s, and then Hugh Laurie is also here.
I like the idea that Tim has secretly been like in his like 50s.
You guys know that picture that's
the
like
whole
that's like so there's a 45-year-old woman here. That is Dan Stoker in the archives if he was played by Hugh Laurie.
Shit, this is hard.
I will tell you
Does he?
that this character is a reoccurring character. However, I would not consider them a main like character. This is someone who
Okay.
they are associated with someone and they appear on occasion.
Are they an entity?
Do they?
They are part of an
Or not-
entity.
are they? Sorry, like are they an avatar? I keep misusing those terms.
No, they are not an avatar. However, they do work closely with an avatar.
Oh,
Mikhail
Is this one of Jonah
Salesa?
Magnus's little friends?
It is not Mikhail Salesa, and no, it is not one of Jonah Magnus's little friends.
Is it Jerry's dad?
Fuck.
No.
Eric Delano. I don't know why. I always pictured Eric Delano as looking like Michael Chiklis, and I don't know why.
Okay, I'm just gonna tell you guys. No,
give us one more hint. We can do it.
One more hint. This character is. This one's gonna give it away though. This character has beef with Daisy.
Ooh.
So it is Breakin.
Is it one of Breakin?
I almost guessed.
Yeah.
I almost guessed that, but I was like, aren't they supposed to be like these like big burly dudes? Like they're not like.
That's
are
hilarious.
That's amazing.
Wow. Now I just questioned who is playing Hope in this AU.
I love the idea
No, that's
of
exactly
Hugh
what
Laurie
I'm
showing
saying.
up, and I love the idea of Hugh Laurie showing up and being like, "I have this weird box for you. Please ignore my business associate. Goodbye."
I've got this weird box for you.
No,
that's how they
him
talk.
doing as every time they're like, he's doing a bad Cockneyed accent.
So true.
That one was like too much.
This next one is bone chilling. Florence Pugh.
Daisy.
Yes.
Wait, what?
Yes.
I love
Daisy
the idea. I love the idea of Daisy doing the Florence Pugh cry face, where she has that like horribly strange frown, like the pouty lip. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like where her mouth is shaped like an upside down C.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's so funny.
Daisy Tanner starring in Little Women is crazy.
At pretending to be a 12-year-old in Little Women, like Florence Pugh is like, yeah, I'm 12. It's like, girl, who was buying that? No,
so true.
Also, I just love when people try to fan cast Daisy as anyone other than like someone who's like actually butch. I'm like, I can't. I don't get it. It's not processing
in fairness
for me.
to the internet, they see any woman that has hair that is like at or above her shoulders, and they're like, wait, is anyone else thinking butch right now? Is anyone else seeing like a hard butch woman?
That's what like people when they see Renee Rapp, they're like, oh my god, she's a masked lesbian. And it's like,
what?
No, okay.
That's crazy.
The number of tweets that are like, Renee Rapp is like a low key, like a hard butch. Like I honestly like she's so masked.
What part of Twitter are you on?
No, I've also
because
seen
the thing is, I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this, but you guys would black out if you met a butch lesbian in real life.
You please read Stone Butch Blues. I'm begging you.
Also, I'm like, this is the same side of the internet that's like, that woman has armpit hair. I have to kill myself. And I'm like, I have bad news about what butch women are. Like, okay.
I have another one, and this is literally, it's only going to be Ollie who knows A, who this person is, and 2,
oh god,
Susan Wokoma.
Okay. Oh my god. First of all, I love Susan Wokoma. She's that bitch.
Best Taskmaster character to contestant.
Thinking about when she had that, guys, if you don't watch Taskmaster, you should. It's all free on YouTube. But Susan Wokoma was like, I'm going to trap a little
boy in a bathroom.
Man in a little boy in a bathroom and throw paper at him. It's not Basira, is it?
No, it is not Basira Hussein.
Oh, okay. Okay, it's like Georgie?
Yes.
Wait.
I think that's inspired.
Oh my god. Okay, wait. That's really good. I'm actually 100% down for that. Anything that keeps Susan Wokoma employed.
Yeah, so true.
Yes,
anyway, sorry. I had to get that
down.
one out of the way just because I saw it and I was like, wait. She's giving.
That's so good. I love that.
This next one, Ollie, I know you know it, so I need you to shut the fuck up about it.
I'll stay quiet. Okay.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh wait, Ollie told me this.
Wait,
I told him.
Is it Gertch?
It is not.
Okay, well, I don't know. It's just like, okay, she has gray hair and is awful, so this might work for her. Who else would Jamie Lee Curtis be playing?
It is another awful old woman.
Is
so.
it Mary
It
Key?
Yes, it is. I will tell you this. when I found that fan cast originally, first of all, I found it months ago. One Sage, I forgot their username on Twitter now. Sage was visiting us of Fulcrum Transmissions fame. And we were in the car looking for some reason at Magnus Archives fan casts, and we almost crashed the fucking car because of this fan cast, because it's just so, oh wow.
We were literally right across the street, like in a shopping center that was right across the street from our house that I'd been to a million times, and I was laughing so hard I just completely pulled into the wrong shopping center and was like, this is not where I was trying to go, but I had to not be on the highway.
Isn't Mary Key like haggard and
British?
old as a
She's
hill?
British.
Well, I mean
No,
that's all of them.
Yeah, no. Fan casters are allergic to casting British people in these roles is the thing. I think it might actually kill them.
You know what, though? That's justice, because I hate British people. They steal American roles all the time.
Yeah.
It's equality. Sorry, I don't know why
This
I'm
is
so
what you guys get for the
right
British
now.
Museum.
Oh my god, wait, Andrew Scott. Guys, can we cast Andrew Scott as Elias Bouchard?
Ollie, I'm not even kidding. I saw that more than once.
That doesn't surprise me, and I'll also say this for certain.
Yeah.
If the Magnus Archives came out in parallel to BBC Sherlock, it would have been hell, because people would have repurposed GIFs from Sherlock and like just add Elias captioning to those GIFs. I know that would happen. I see it in my mind's eye.
You just went into the alternate reality. Like, that's real.
I
that happened somewhere.
I found where the fears went.
That's somewhere else.
The fears went wherever. The fears went to whatever universe where Hamilton and Glee came out at the same time.
Oh god, that's so scary.
Wait, you guys,
anyway.
you guys, when will they have an episode of Glee where they sing Grifter's Bone? That's what, if there's a Glee reboot.
That's
Rachel
every
Berry should
episode,
do it.
babe.
The Glee soundtrack.
Wait,
The Glee soundtrack is like is American Grifter's Bone. Okay,
some of
let's get it.
some of those
POV.
tracks. Wait, what is
POV, Rachel Berry causes you to kill yourself.
what Avatar?
Probably a real thing that's happened to some
Which
people.
entity is Mr. Schue in Avatar?
My first thought is the spiral. Just
Yeah,
'cause
he
it's like,
is the
what
throne
the
of
fuck
delusion.
you are. But I also like. I feel like he could be the stranger because he is like the uncanny valley of
He
men.
shows up everywhere.
Remember when he was the Grinch?
I try not to.
Anyways,
Mel,
can I go
would you
on?
like
Because I
to-
have so many, but I want to. I need to show you. I'm gonna say a couple of actors' names now. Give it a couple of seconds to think this through. This list of actors for a character. Adam Scott from Parks and Rec, Michael B. Jordan, Chris Evans, Neil Patrick Harris, and Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things, like Eddie. All for the same guy.
I already have my guess. I have my guess.
It's a Jerry.
No. Chris
Is it
Evans
Tim
with
Stoker?
that. It is Tim Stoker.
I never miss.
Michael B. Jordan as Tim Stoker kind
I
of
say
eats,
that-
though.
I say that after I miss a million times
I'm
already.
sorry, I just want to clarify. I didn't imagine this. You said Neil Patrick Harris, right?
I did say Neil Patrick
Someone-
Harris. It's so
Someone
crazy.
heard Tim Stoker's voice and they were like, "Wait, you guys, I'm seeing Neil Patrick Harris in my mind's eye."
Okay, here's the other crazy thing though.
Oh, wow.
I saw Neil Patrick Harris as another character. Who do you think it was?
Elias Bouchard.
Yes, it was.
No.
No, because the idea of fucking Neil Patrick Harris being like the same place they've always been, Martin, watching my institute. Like, should I kill myself?
Here's a problem. That's exactly what they did when they cast him as the fucking toy maker in Doctor Who. And it was not a good casting. Like, it was bad the whole time. And not bad in a fun and campy Doctor Who way. It was bad in a why is he cast as this way? Literally, that would be exactly what you were imagining is what happened in Doctor Who. Yes, I'm a hater.
I feel like
Okay,
we brushed over Chris Evans, Tim Stoker really
Yeah,
fast.
no, that's exactly. I'm like so puzzled by that one. What's going on there?
I was just gonna say my Tim Stoker fan cast is Dev Patel, and
Oh.
I stand by that. I think he.
Wow, that ruffling a lot of feathers in the
I'm
fandom.
sorry to say it.
Yeah, the
Tim
amount-
Stoker is
but I'm-
canonically really, really hot. Dev
Yeah.
Patel, stunning, beautiful, gorgeous.
This is why I'm on my Charles Melton Tim Stoker fan cast.
And that would
I'm
be
not.
brilliant.
I feel like I feel like him being played by a Riverdale alum also feels
Hey,
right.
I see the vision. I see the vision.
Wait. What's his name who plays Archie? No, not Archie. What's his one of the twins? What is his name?
Dylan Sprouse?
Cole
Or
Sprouse?
Cole
Yeah.
Sprouse? I don't know.
Cole Sprouse. Cole Sprouse as Jonathan Sims.
No.
No,
I rebuke
know,
it in the
it's-
name of the Lord.
I condemn thee
it's
to a year
terrible.
inside of the vast. Enjoy your stay.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible and awful. It's just because I just imagine that I'm different. I'm not like everybody.
I need Cole. No, you know who I think Cole Sprouse would actually be really good at playing? That one guy who was like, I'm really into skydiving, and then his mom came to the Magnus Institute and was like, the sky ate my son.
So
Can I just
true.
say, I
Okay.
wish that I were Simon Fairchild. I want to be able to be like, behold, Claudia, infinite roller coaster, and then just like send her there.
So true.
Thinking about when Mike Crew does that to John, and he's like, "Oh my god, you bitches keep coming to my house. Goodbye, you're going to be falling now." Or when he put that guy's brother on a big ladder. Everyone's so creative.
Okay, I also need to talk about this. Matthew McFadden.
Oh, is it Elias?
No.
I want him as Peter Lucas so
Yeah.
bad.
Well, he's not
That
Peter
we-
Lucas to this person.
Fuck.
Simon Fairchild.
No! Why would he be an old man?
Wait,
Well,
Tim Stoker.
Mel, you have
Hold
to keep
on,
in
is it
mind-
Tim Stoker?
It's not Tim Stoker.
Do
Is
you
it
guys feel
Mark?
like
I was
in
gonna
another
say, in terms of
universe?
him,
Do you guys feel like in another universe, John and Tim Stoker are kind of like Tom and cousin Greg?
Please.
no, I don't think
No,
that,
I
Noah.
don't.
I'm trying to get into the headspace of who would put this. Because he is older than like 40, he is basically ancient to people online.
Yeah, but everyone sees him as
So
the
Jurgen
age,
Leitner.
the age he was in Pride and Prejudice.
He's not.
It's not Jurgen Leitner.
It's not Jurgen Leitner. I'll tell
Fuck,
you this.
he would be a really good Jurgen Leitner.
Shut up. What I'm saying is that, well, not what I'm saying. What this person online is saying is that he should be Jonathan Sims. That's what the streets are saying.
What?
Wait, are you for real?
Yeah.
That's so
No, I think
okay.
I think
okay,
he
but
should play
here,
Jonathan Sims is dead bad.
so true. Here's the last thing. The last thing I'll say. Fuck, there's so many that I didn't get to do, but are too good. I'll share this with you shortly. This can be my last one, and then I'll be out. Zach Galifianakis.
Please don't say Martin.
No.
It is Martin Blackwood.
I immediately was like, well, who's the one fat character?
Wow.
Martin, I'll
Wow,
save you.
it says a lot about society.
I mean, listen, no disrespect to Zach Galifianakis. I just feel like there are other actors who may do the role better.
Oh,
I-
like, you know how someone else said Andrew Garfield, or perhaps even Freddie Wong.
As Martin? Wait,
That
can you tell us some of the ones for Martin, please?
Yeah, here, I'll just read the ones that I got. And once again, I did this basically 20 minutes before we started recording. And this was just like not even the breaking the surface. Evan Peters, Taron Egerton, Josh Gad.
Wait, these are all
Andrew
for
Garfield.
Martin?
Yes.
What?
Freddie Wong. Just off the
Freddie
top
Wong
of the
is
dome.
really perplexing to me.
That's a
Evan
crazy
Peters
one. It's
is-
so out of left field.
Evan Peters is crazy
Okay,
for
well, here's the
frankly
even
anyone in
crazier
this
thing.
show, but like for Martin especially. What the hell?
No, here's the crazy thing. I also saw Evan Peters more than once for Elias Bouchard.
Huh? This is so...
I don't even know what to do with that information because, like...
I think that people don't realize that Elias Bouchard has experienced twink death. I don't think that people have gotten that through their fucking dome.
I think okay, but here's my hot take about Elias. I feel like he could be he's one of those people who's like, because, okay, fun fact, there isn't a consistency issue in the Magnus Archives vis-a-vis Elias Bouchard's age, because there's a statement where Martin is, when that guy who's like, I played a board game with death and now I am like still alive and I really need to be dead. And I think John was like, oh, I think, and that statement was given in the 70s. And he's like, I think Elias worked here then, which was like, he said early on, which was ruled to be a consistency issue because Elias canonically at the time of the show cannot be more than like 45, just based on when James Wright took his body and became him, and when Jonah Magnus like became him. So it's like Elias Bouchard is someone who is like, he's experienced twink death, but it is still recent enough that he's not prepared to move on.
And Peter Lucas has told him that. I think
yeah, and that's why they divorced
the third time.
Actually, I'm just gonna send this to you guys so you can look at it in your own time. One of my favorite ones that I didn't get to do was Jamila Jamil as not Sasha.
Oh my god.
Okay, that's actually like, she is so uncanny. That is actually perfect casting.
I was like kind of ate. Anyways, that was fantastic.
Let's go look.
Zoe Kravitz as Basira.
Brian David Gilbert as Jonathan Sims.
Oh.
John Schue.
Matt?
Adrian Brody as Jonathan Sims.
Michael Sheen as Peter Lucas.
Did anyone else see Matt Smith as Michael Distortion?
He actually would kind of eat that up.
Okay. Rosamund Pike is Daisy.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I know.
Rachel
That
Weisz
was
as
great.
Helen. Rachel Weisz as Helen Richardson is fucking crazy. First of all, what's wrong with you? Second of all, are you serious?
Michaela Cole as Helen Richardson's actually kind of
Yeah, she would eat that.
I agree.
Michael Sheen is
I'm sorry, David
I
Tennant
really
and
need
Mads Mikkelsen as Elias. Hello?
We also need to talk about. We also need to talk about Zoe Kravitz as Basira.
No, that's literally the first one I
Too
saw. I was
good.
like, hello? No, but I do think Tom Hardy as Elias Bouchard is the funniest one on it.
The problem is that if Elias Bouchard was Tom Hardy, I would get it. Like,
You're
like I'd be like,
but I'm
whatever
built
you, I'd be like, whatever you want, baby girl, let's tell the world. Like, I'll figure it out. But the problem is Elias Bouchard is not Tom Hardy.
This is so...
Do you guys think that James Wright was ever like when Jonah Magnus was James Wright, he was ever like, you know, what if one of my, like, he must have thought over the course of all of his years body hopping, he must have been like, you know, what happens if this body just like dies spontaneously before I can interview like a new host? So I have this idea that he has an emergency contact, which is whoever he's, you know, engaged with from the Lucas family at the time, because I believe he was fucking with Mordecai Lucas as well. I believe he's had a lover of every generation of that family. But do you think he had to be like, hey, listen, like Peter Lucas's fucking dad or whatever, he's like, hey man, I'm like dying actively, could you come and bring the melon baller? We gotta go find a twink.
And they never really explain how that shit works. They really just don't.
I really believe he just has a melon baller and he goes at it and is like, all right, popping my shit in there.
Just his brain?
His eyes, Claudia.
What do you think a melon baller is capable of accomplishing? I just want to interrogate.
They literally, no, they say that in the show, is that Elias, like, Jonah Magnus takes his, like, Jonah Magnus's body does not have eyes in it.
Yeah, but like,
they keep transferring the eyes to his new, that's how he transfers his consciousness.
Wait, you guys, I just have to give Jonah Magnus ocular cancer and it's fucking over for him.
No,
this is
literally.
my plan to defeat this man.
Get the corruption on it.
Okay, imagine if Elias, like, imagine if they did to Elias what, like, Melanie did, and they just blinded him, would OG Elias come back? Would he be like, whoa, guys, I've had the craziest fucking
Also,
time.
I can't see.
The last thing I remember is I was really worried I was high during my job interview. What the fuck?
Him being high during his job interview had to have been the funniest reveal.
But then he wasn't. He wasn't. Because he was like, oh my god, he knows I'm high. Wait, I'm not high. Why does he make me feel like that?
I feel the
Original
rush.
Elias.
Anyway.
You know what? I do think I could convince Elias Bouchard to have VCR cleaner. I really do. But I also wouldn't want to do that with him. I love ending on a note about poppers. And with that, let's do the outro. Thank you so much for joining us this week for RuPalp's Pod Race. And thank you again for sticking with us through our hiatus and with our new series, RuPalp's Day Off, with episodes that will drop every 2 weeks for the foreseeable future. But make sure you're following us on Instagram, Tumblr, TikTok, and unfortunately Twitter at RuPalp's Pod Race for updates. Our next day off will either be a secret special episode we have planned or our coverage of Baldur's Gate 3. And if you want to ask us a question, you're welcome to send that to our TikTok Q&A, Tumblr Askbox, or email us at rupalpspodrace@gmail.com. And if you really love the show, please rate and review it on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Spotify, Overcast, and any other podcatcher that allows ratings, and tell a friend who might be interested. It really helps the show, especially after our hiatus. Finally, if you'd like to hear more of us, you can hear Jess as one of the cast members on the High Republic Tabletop RPG podcast for Light and Dice, and listen to the Mystery Spotcast, where Claudia and Ollie recap all of Supernatural so that you'll never watch it. And links to both those podcasts are in our show notes. May the Force be with you, and don't kriff it up.
Waka waka.
Waka waka.
Waka waka.
Waka.
Her web connects us all.